A cold wind drifts across the Nubian desert, carrying with it grains of ancient sand that have buried secrets for thousands of years. Night settles across the rocky horizon, but instead of silence, the land seems to pulse, alive with the same celestial patterns that once guided forgotten eyes. Long before the world spoke of Greeks calculating the heavens or Arabs charting the stars, people here in the ancient kingdom of Nubia carved their understanding of the cosmos into stone. Not as myth, not as ritual alone, but as science, pure, meticulous, astonishingly advanced for its age. Imagine a night thousands of years ago. A group of Nubian skywatchers emerges from the darkness, their silhouettes outlined by moonlight. They carry nothing but carved tools, polished stone markers, and their own trained instincts. They walk deliberately toward a stone circle, older than most written languages, where each monolith casts a shadow across the desert floor. As dawn approaches, a sliver of light touches a specific stone, aligning perfectly. The watchers exhale, not in surprise, but in recognition. The solstice has arrived. Their calendar resets. Their world is in balance again. This is not a fantasy. It is not speculation built on loose fragments. Archaeologists have discovered ancient Nubian observatories, structures like Nabta Playa, that predate Stonehenge by thousands of years. Beneath those stones lies a coded message that these people measured the movement of the sun, understood the progression of seasons, and built a system of celestial knowledge with precision that shocks modern researchers. But the deeper mystery is not that they observed the sun. Every ancient culture did. The mystery is how they knew so much so early, and why their scientific legacy vanished so completely from mainstream history. As the morning light spreads across the desert plains, we follow those astronomers through the rhythm of their world. They lived between shifting dunes and the life-giving Nile, a region where the sky was more than a canvas of stars. It was a clock, a map, a prophecy. Each constellation carried meaning. Each planetary motion held purpose. Their survival depended on precisely predicting floods, droughts, migrations, and the return of life after brutal seasons of heat. To ignore the stars was to risk death. To understand them was to control destiny. But understanding came with a price. The more they learned, the more their society changed. Power shifted toward the astronomer-priests, mysterious figures who moved through their kingdom with quiet authority. They were scholars, healers, and advisors, capable of reading the heavens in ways ordinary people could not. In time, they became guardians of a hidden archive of knowledge, charts, alignments, geometric systems, and calculations that have since been lost to sand and time. Their work reveals something staggering. Nubian astronomers were not merely stargazers. They were engineers of time. Their stone circles track the year with uncanny precision. Their burial mounds align with the rising of Sirius long before Egyptian dynasties adopted the same celestial marker. Their mathematical ratios indicate a working grasp of astronomical cycles so complex that many historians once assumed Africans could not have developed them. That assumption, unfair, unscientific, rooted in centuries of misunderstanding, has finally begun to crumble. Because the evidence is undeniable. Pieces of polished granite inscribed with directional patterns. Rock art depicting star clusters with an accuracy comparable to modern charts. Traces of ritual spaces aligned not to gods, but to cosmic events. It paints a picture of a civilization that understood itself as part of a larger cosmic machine. One that they could interpret, anticipate, and even manipulate through the power of knowledge. Yet, despite the enormity of their discoveries, the world scarcely remembers them. Nubia, once a powerhouse of culture, innovation, and astronomical brilliance, became overshadowed by the massive shadow of its northern neighbor, Egypt. Over centuries, stories faded. Records disappeared. Monuments were swallowed by shifting sands. And what remained were fragments, enough to suggest something extraordinary, but not enough to tell the full story. That loss of memory becomes part of the mystery itself. How could a civilization capable of building some of the oldest astronomical structures on Earth simply vanish from scientific history? What circumstances, what political forces, what natural disasters or cultural shifts could erase such monumental knowledge? These questions linger like ghosts over the Nubian landscape, demanding answers the desert refuses to give easily. As night returns again in our journey, we stand where those astronomers once stood, beneath a sky unchanged for thousands of years. The Milky Way stretches across the darkness like a river of light. Constellations shimmer with the same silent authority they held in ancient times. And in that stillness, we feel the weight of what has been forgotten. We sense that these early scientists were not primitive people experimenting blindly with nature. They were thinkers, observers, innovators, people who looked at the universe not with fear, but with curiosity and discipline. Their story is not simply one of stones and stars. It is a story of human ambition, of intellectual courage, of knowledge pursued against the odds. It is the story of a civilization that understood the heavens long before history gave them credit. And as we uncover their world, step by step, we begin to see a different timeline emerging. One that challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient science. The desert holds its breath. The stars will overhead, and the long-lost astronomers of Nubia wait for their story to be told once more, not as half-forgotten footnotes, but as pioneers whose minds reached farther than the boundaries of their time. In the beginning, before Nubia became a crossroads of kingdoms and empires, it was a land shaped by extremes. The Nile carved a green ribbon through an otherwise unforgiving world of dunes, volcanic stone, and endless horizons. Life clung to this river like a heartbeat, pulsing through generations. And yet, despite the harshness, the people who emerged here were not defined by struggle alone. They were defined by adaptation, intelligence, and a profound relationship with nature's rhythms. To understand the astronomical brilliance of Nubia, we must first understand the land that formed its thinkers. The climate during early Nubian history shifted dramatically over thousands of years. What is now barren desert was once a grassland dotted with lakes, where animals migrated and early communities followed. These early groups learned quickly that survival depended on timing, knowing when rains would arrive, when herds would move, when rivers would rise. Season after season, their awareness sharpened into an instinctive connection with the environment. It was only natural that they began to look upward, toward the sky, the only constant in an ever-shifting world. The earliest Nubian communities were not isolated wanderers. They belonged to a network of cultures spread across what we now call the Sahel and Upper Nile regions. Innovations traveled across these lands long before borders existed. Tools, stories, rituals, and, crucially, early scientific observations. When the Sahara began to dry and lakes disappeared, some groups migrated toward the Nile Valley, bringing with them thousands of years of accumulated knowledge. They brought agricultural techniques, stone-crafting skills, and their inherited habit of watching the sky. Slowly, these communities formed stable settlements along the southern stretches of the Nile. They built homes from mud brick, crafted pottery decorated with geometric patterns, and buried their dead with care. They were not yet a kingdom, but they were forming the intellectual foundations of one. It was during this time that the seeds of Nubian astronomy took root, not as a formal discipline, but as a necessity woven into daily life. Farmers observed the stars to predict when to plant. Travelers used them to navigate vast open plains. Priests used them to time rituals meant to harmonize earthly life with cosmic cycles. This early relationship with the sky was practical, not mystical. People studied patterns because patterns determined survival. They saw the rising of Sirius as a celestial signal marking the annual floods. They marked positions of constellations that warned of approaching seasonal changes. Over generations, this informal observation evolved into something far more organized. Knowledge began to concentrate in the hands of certain individuals, those with sharper eyes, greater memory, and deeper curiosity. From these individuals emerged the earliest astronomer-priests of Nubia. They were not rulers, not yet, but they were respected figures whose role blended observation, spiritual guidance, and education. They taught younger members of the community how to track the night sky. They created the first markers, simple alignments of stones, wooden poles, or carved symbols, placed in precise locations to record celestial movements. These rudimentary tools were the ancestors of the great observatories that would later appear across Nubian lands. As settlements grew more complex, so did their relationship with time. Communities began developing early calendars based on lunar cycles, seasonal patterns, and the predictable motion of the sun. These calendars allowed them to coordinate harvesting, religious ceremonies, and long-distance trade with remarkable accuracy. And all of it stemmed from one observation. The skies above were a living map, and if one learned to read it, the future became less threatening, more predictable. Meanwhile, the world beyond Nubia began to shift. Cultures in the Near East and Mediterranean were only starting to settle into agricultural life. While those civilizations built their first towns, Nubian communities were already ingraining astronomical cycles into their architecture and ritual spaces. Yet, because they left few written records, their contributions were underestimated for centuries. Their knowledge was transmitted through oral traditions, symbolic engravings, and careful custodianship within priestly groups. Every generation inherited a slightly sharper understanding. It was during these early centuries that the psychological foundation of Nubian scientific thought crystallized. They did not see the world as divided between the natural and the divine. Instead, they viewed the universe as a single interconnected system where the behavior of the heavens influenced the river, the land, and human life. This worldview encouraged deep observation rather than domination. Instead of manipulating nature, they sought to understand it, align with it, and harness its patterns. Their evolving society began to reflect this cosmic philosophy. Villages oriented their dwellings to favorable seasonal winds and solar positions. Ritual centers were built along lines that mirrored star paths. Burial practices shifted to emphasize celestial direction. Graves pointing toward symbolic horizons, representing both endings and beginnings. Bit by bit, astronomy became more than a tool. It became a cultural identity. But the greatest transformation was yet to come. As communities unified into early chiefdoms, and later into organized states, astronomy shifted from a shared communal skill to a guarded intellectual treasure. The future power of kings would be intertwined with the wisdom of those who charted the heavens. And in the shadows of rising temples and ceremonial complexes, the first true astronomical elite of Nubia was being shaped, people destined to create structures and systems that would mystify scientists thousands of years later. From this landscape of early innovation emerged the foundation of a scientific legacy the world nearly forgot. One built not by conquerors, but by careful observers who listened to the language of the sky. And as we move deeper into their history, the outlines of an extraordinary civilization begin to sharpen, revealing that the Nubians were not simply students of the stars. They were among the earliest architects of cosmic knowledge on Earth. Across the shifting sands of Nubia, a new era was dawning. Small communities that had survived the harsh cycles of drought and flood were beginning to coalesce into larger settlements, forming the earliest recognizable kingdoms along the Nile. These early rulers understood that power depended not only on military might or control of fertile lands but also on knowledge, particularly knowledge of the skies above. For in a land where survival was intertwined with the rhythm of the sun and the annual rise of the Nile, understanding celestial cycles was the ultimate form of influence. By now, the role of the astronomer-priests had grown far beyond simple observation. They were advisors, educators, and cultural architects. In the hearts of emerging cities, they designed ritual spaces that doubled as astronomical instruments. Stone circles, standing pillars, and aligned mounds were no mere decoration. They were calibrated to mark solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of key stars. Every shadow, every reflection, every precise angle was intentional, a silent testament to centuries of observation and calculation. When the first light of dawn struck these stones in perfect alignment, the city's leaders would know that time itself was under control, their power sanctioned by the cosmos. Trade routes that threaded through Nubia carried more than ivory, gold, and exotic animals. Ideas traveled as well: geometrical techniques, calendrical systems, and methods for tracking celestial events. Nubian astronomers were not isolated savants. They were part of a network of knowledge, connecting distant villages, marketplaces, and temples. A skilled observer in one city could calibrate stones to align with the solstice, while a counterpart hundreds of miles away verified the calculations against the same rising stars. In this way, Nubia became an early hub for coordinated scientific practice, a civilization in which astronomy shaped daily life, political authority, and even spiritual belief. The precision of their work is astonishing when measured against modern standards. At sites such as Nabta Playa, the alignment of massive stones corresponds to the positions of Orion's belt and other significant stars, calibrated to an accuracy that would impress astronomers today. Some of these markers appear to anticipate precession, the slow wobble of the Earth's axis, a phenomenon not recognized in mainstream science until millennia later. This level of sophistication raises questions that continue to puzzle historians. How did a civilization so distant from the classical centers of learning acquire such knowledge? How did they measure and predict the heavens with such clarity without writing systems as extensive as those of Egypt or Mesopotamia? The answer, in part, lies in observation combined with meticulous record-keeping. Nubian astronomer-priests developed methods to track celestial movements using rudimentary, yet ingenious, tools, shadows cast by stones, reflections in water basins, and sight lines between mounds. These methods were repeated year after year, generation after generation, until patterns emerged. Through repetition and refinement, they discovered cycles of stars and planets that allowed them not only to predict seasonal changes, but also to anticipate eclipses and other rare celestial events. It was knowledge born of patience, precision, and unwavering attention to the cosmos. Yet their achievements were not purely academic. In Nubia, understanding the heavens was inseparable from power and politics. Kings relied on astronomers to determine the timing of harvests, military campaigns, and religious ceremonies. A king who ignored the advice of these celestial experts risked disaster. One who followed it could consolidate authority and ensure prosperity. The astronomers, in turn, held a subtle but formidable influence. They were gatekeepers of knowledge so advanced it could shape life, survival, and destiny itself. In a sense, control over the heavens became a form of political leverage, and with it came an aura of mystery and reverence. But this growing influence also carried dangers. Rival factions within kingdoms, jealous of the astronomers' sway, sought to challenge their authority. Some rulers feared that celestial knowledge might destabilize power if it fell into the wrong hands. In response, the astronomers developed secrecy around their techniques. Knowledge that had once been communal became specialized, guarded closely, and transmitted only to chosen apprentices. Their observations, calculations, and methods were encoded in symbols, alignments, and oral instruction. By doing so, they ensured that the brilliance of Nubian astronomy would survive, and yet, paradoxically, also become hidden from much of the world. The impact of these astronomers extended beyond practical concerns. They shaped the spiritual and cultural life of Nubia, influencing myths, rituals, and the collective imagination. The stars were not merely distant points of light. They were messengers, guides, and reflections of human fate. The rising of certain constellations was associated with the soul's journey after death. Certain eclipses were omens, marking moments of transition or warning. Every observation was layered with meaning, connecting human life to the grand architecture of the cosmos. In doing so, Nubian astronomy transcended utility, becoming both a science and a philosophy. Even today, the echoes of this ancient knowledge are visible across the desert. Excavations reveal carefully placed stones, ceremonial structures, and burials oriented in ways that mirror the movement of celestial bodies. Each discovery hints at a civilization that viewed itself as part of a larger cosmic order, one that could be interpreted, predicted, and aligned with human action. And while much has been lost to time, these remnants force us to reconsider assumptions about who the pioneers of science were and where their ideas originated. As we delve further into Nubian history, a pattern begins to emerge. Here was a civilization that fused observation, mathematics, spirituality, and governance into a single, cohesive system. Its astronomers were not merely chroniclers of the sky. They were architects of society, shaping life, faith, and destiny through their understanding of the universe. And yet, despite this brilliance, their achievements were largely overshadowed, dismissed, or forgotten in the broader narratives of history. The deeper we investigate, the more we encounter a striking truth. Nubia's astronomical legacy challenges everything we think we know about the origins of science, civilization, and human ingenuity. The rise of Nubia's early kingdoms marked not just political consolidation but the formalization of knowledge into institutions. As villages merged and chiefdoms evolved into complex states, the need for organized observation became clear. The skies, once a tool for survival, became a domain of scholarship and authority. Nubian astronomers transformed from local advisors into an elite class, entrusted with understanding the heavens and interpreting their messages for kings, priests, and the wider population. Their influence was profound. The trajectory of a dynasty could hinge on a single observation of the sun, the moon, or distant stars. These astronomer-priests were custodians of both practical and esoteric knowledge. Their training began in childhood, often under strict supervision of older mentors who had spent decades mastering observation, calculation, and symbolic interpretation. Apprentices learned to chart the movements of celestial bodies, align stones with the solstice, and predict seasonal changes with extraordinary precision. Their education was rigorous and exacting, blending geometry, empirical study, and a deep philosophical understanding of the cosmos. To be an astronomer in Nubia was to hold power equivalent to the king himself, for mastery of the sky equated to mastery of life. The construction of ceremonial centers during this period reveals the sophistication of their knowledge. Sites like Nabta and other yet-to-be fully excavated locations demonstrate meticulous alignment with astronomical events. Stones were positioned to mark solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of key stars. Some alignments correspond to the heliacal rising of Sirius, which heralded the annual Nile flood, an event central to agriculture and survival. Others suggest tracking of lunar cycles, eclipses, and possibly even planetary motion, long before such observations were formalized elsewhere. Every stone, mound, and marker was placed with an intentionality that demanded deep understanding of mathematics and geometry. The social implications of this astronomical authority were profound. Kings relied on astronomers not just for agricultural planning but for maintaining legitimacy. A ruler who could predict the timing of floods or celestial events was perceived as divinely sanctioned. Astronomers became intermediaries between humans and the cosmos, translating the universe's silent patterns into practical and political guidance. It is possible that some rulers deliberately enhanced the mystique of these astronomers, using their knowledge to consolidate power, suppress dissent, or guide strategic decisions. The lines between science, religion, and governance were deliberately blurred, a fusion that reinforced both authority and societal cohesion. Despite their elevated status, Nubian astronomers were deeply connected to the broader community. They did not operate in isolation. Knowledge was disseminated through rituals, festivals, and public demonstrations of celestial events. Communities gathered to witness solstices, alignments, and rare eclipses, events that reinforced both cultural identity and respect for the astronomical elite. Yet, while certain knowledge was shared for social cohesion, the most precise techniques and calculations remained closely guarded. Only those deemed worthy, successors, apprentices, or trusted allies, could access the full depth of understanding, ensuring the continuity of expertise across generations. The astronomers' methods were ingenious and, in many ways, ahead of their time. They used simple tools, poles, sightlines, shadows, and horizon markers, but applied them in ways that revealed intricate cycles. Observations were repeated night after night, season after season, creating empirical records without written codices in the early stages. Over time, these observations became codified in symbolic representations carved into stone or represented in ceremonial layouts. The precision required to predict solstices, star risings, and lunar phenomena suggests a remarkable understanding of geometry and proportionality, rivaling that of later civilizations more celebrated in mainstream history. Trade and communication amplified the impact of Nubian astronomy. Information traveled along Nile corridors and desert routes, linking settlements and enhancing the collective knowledge base. Skilled astronomers could compare observations, verify alignments, and refine predictions, creating a network of intellectual exchange that functioned across political boundaries. Nubia was not isolated. It was part of an ancient system of knowledge transfer, one that extended into neighboring regions and perhaps influenced Egyptian practices, though historical acknowledgement has often minimized this contribution. Yet even as this knowledge expanded, Nubian astronomers faced challenges. Political instability, environmental shifts, and the rise and fall of dynasties threatened the continuity of their records. Their ability to preserve knowledge relied not on written texts alone but on the careful training of apprentices, the alignment of structures, and the meticulous passing of observational wisdom. Each generation bore the responsibility of maintaining centuries of accumulated insight, a burden both extraordinary and precarious. Through all this, one theme stands clear. Nubian astronomy was not accidental. It was deliberate, sophisticated, and woven into the very fabric of society. The precision of their observations, the integration of knowledge into governance, and the spiritual significance of the stars reveal a civilization that regarded science and the cosmos as inseparable from human destiny. These astronomers did more than chart the skies. They shaped the worldview, politics, and culture of an entire people. As the kingdoms flourished, so too did the ambition of their astronomers. Their observations began to extend beyond immediate survival and agriculture. Patterns were tracked over decades and generations, revealing cycles that were not immediately obvious. Lunar and solar variations, periodic alignments of stars, and the timing of celestial events that occurred only once in a lifetime were recorded, studied, and incorporated into societal planning. In doing so, Nubian astronomers built a legacy that intertwined meticulous science with the spiritual and political heartbeat of their civilization, leaving traces that would silently echo for millennia, waiting to be rediscovered. The deserts and plains of Nubia held more than sand and stone. They held memory. Across centuries, the astronomers of this land developed a profound ability to observe, calculate, and anticipate the movements of the heavens. Their knowledge was not static. It evolved through experimentation, meticulous record-keeping, and a relentless curiosity about the world beyond the horizon. By the time Nubia's early kingdoms solidified their power along the Nile, astronomy had become a central pillar of society, a discipline intertwined with religion, governance, and daily life. The sky was no longer a distant canopy. It was a living, dynamic framework through which humans could measure time, predict the future, and understand their place in the universe. Among the most striking examples of their ingenuity are the ceremonial centers and stone circles scattered across the Nubian landscape. Some, like Nabta Playa, predate the pyramids of Giza, yet display an understanding of astronomy that rivals or even surpasses contemporaneous cultures. Massive stones, carefully positioned to cast shadows at specific times of the year, track the solstices with precision that could only have been achieved through repeated observation and refined measurement. These stones are aligned not by chance but by design, forming an architectural language that communicates knowledge across generations. Every placement, every angle, every shadow speaks of a people who could read the cosmos as fluently as we read text today. The astronomers themselves were both scholars and spiritual intermediaries. They were trained from a young age, often chosen for their exceptional memory, discipline, and capacity for observation. Apprentices spent years learning to chart the movement of stars, the phases of the moon, and the patterns of the sun. Their training was exacting, combining geometry, empirical observation, and symbolic interpretation. It was not mere superstition. It was science embedded in culture, a systematic approach to understanding natural cycles and translating them into practical guidance for kings, farmers, and communities. What made Nubian astronomy extraordinary was its predictive power. By tracking celestial cycles over years and even decades, astronomers could forecast seasonal floods, predict the timing of planting and harvest, and anticipate rare celestial phenomena such as eclipses. This knowledge gave Nubian rulers immense power. A king who could align policy, military campaigns, and agricultural planning with the cosmos appeared divinely sanctioned. The astronomers' ability to read the sky conferred authority both on themselves and on those who heeded their guidance. It was a fusion of science and political strategy that elevated Nubia above neighboring regions, at least for a time. Yet the role of the astronomer was fraught with responsibility. Their predictions could determine the survival of communities, the success of harvests, and the legitimacy of rulers. A miscalculation might mean famine, social unrest, or even the downfall of a dynasty. To safeguard their knowledge and maintain accuracy, astronomers developed intricate methods of record-keeping. Observations were often encoded in symbolic representations, carved into stone or arranged in ceremonial layouts, creating a system that allowed precise transmission across generations even without widespread literacy. This careful stewardship of knowledge ensured that insights gained over centuries could persist, even amid political upheaval and environmental change. The astronomical practices of Nubia were not purely utilitarian. They also shaped the spiritual and cultural imagination. The rising and setting of stars, the phases of the moon, and the alignment of the sun with monumental stones became imbued with meaning. Rituals and ceremonies were timed to coincide with celestial events, linking human life with the rhythms of the cosmos. Constellations and planetary cycles were interpreted as messages from the universe, guiding moral, social, and spiritual decision-making. In this way, science and spirituality were inseparable, both grounded in observation, pattern recognition, and the belief that understanding the heavens could illuminate human destiny. Trade and communication networks further amplified the influence of Nubian astronomers. Ideas, techniques, and symbolic systems traveled along the Nile and across desert corridors, allowing knowledge to spread and be refined. Communities distant from one another could coordinate observations and compare data, creating a networked intelligence that transcended political boundaries. In this way, Nubia became not just a local center of astronomical learning but an influential node in a broader system of early science, a civilization capable of both observation and innovation at a remarkable scale. But as impressive as their achievements were, they were also fragile. Environmental shifts, political instability, and the passing of generations threatened the continuity of knowledge. To protect their work, astronomers employed secrecy and mentorship. Only select apprentices were entrusted with the full scope of understanding, ensuring that knowledge remained controlled, coherent, and accurate. The deliberate cultivation of expertise created a class of guardians whose authority extended beyond practical knowledge into moral and spiritual realms, reinforcing the intertwined nature of science and society. Despite the centuries that have passed, traces of their accomplishments remain. Stone alignments, burial mounds, and ceremonial sites speak to the precision, discipline, and ingenuity of Nubian astronomers. These remnants force us to reconsider traditional narratives of scientific history, which have long ignored the contributions of African civilizations. Nubia's astronomical legacy is more than an archaeological curiosity. It is evidence of a sophisticated culture whose understanding of the cosmos was centuries ahead of its time, and whose intellectual ambition challenges our assumptions about the origins of science. The more we uncover about Nubia's astronomers, the more their story resonates with a sense of human perseverance and curiosity. They were not merely observers of the sky. They were architects of time, bridging the practical and the philosophical, shaping society and culture with knowledge that transcended generations. Their legacy invites us to ask difficult questions. How many other civilizations have contributed to science in ways we have yet to recognize? How often has brilliance been obscured by the passage of time, overshadowed by political or cultural dominance elsewhere? And above all, what might we learn if we continue to uncover and honor these hidden histories, allowing them to reshape our understanding of humanity's relationship with the cosmos? The kingdoms of Nubia did not rise in isolation. They emerged in a landscape defined by extremes: deserts that could swallow entire caravans, rivers that could flood without warning, and skies that served as the only reliable guide through an ever-shifting world. For the Nubian astronomers, these extremes were both a challenge and an opportunity. Survival depended on understanding the rhythms of the natural world, and the sky provided the most precise measure of time and order. By observing the rising and setting of stars, the phases of the moon, and the movement of the sun, these early scholars developed systems that allowed their society not merely to endure, but to flourish. With the consolidation of power into centralized kingdoms, astronomy became more than a practical tool. It became a cornerstone of political authority. Kings and queens relied on the advice of astronomer-priests to determine the timing of planting and harvesting, the launching of military campaigns, and even the scheduling of religious festivals. Knowledge of the heavens granted rulers a form of legitimacy. To predict eclipses or the precise arrival of the Nile's floods was to align oneself with the cosmos itself. In this way, astronomy became deeply intertwined with power, shaping not just survival but the very structure of governance. The astronomers themselves occupied a unique social position. They were simultaneously scientists, spiritual intermediaries, and educators. From a young age, promising students were selected for their keen observation, memory, and analytical skill. Under the guidance of experienced mentors, they learned to track celestial movements using an array of tools, shadow-casting stones, water reflections, and sight lines between carefully positioned mounds. Each method, though simple in material, was extraordinarily precise in execution. Observations were repeated night after night, season after season, gradually producing a corpus of knowledge capable of predicting seasonal, lunar, and even solar events with remarkable accuracy. One of the most striking aspects of Nubian astronomy was its integration with architecture and landscape. Ceremonial centers, burial sites, and ritual structures were meticulously aligned with celestial phenomena. Stones were positioned to mark solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of significant stars. Some alignments even correspond to astronomical cycles that were not fully understood by contemporary civilizations in neighboring regions. The placement of these stones was not arbitrary. Each one was a deliberate calculation, a physical manifestation of knowledge intended to endure through generations. In effect, the land itself became a giant instrument for recording and interpreting the cosmos. This period also saw the emergence of symbolic representation in astronomical knowledge. While Nubians initially relied on oral transmission and empirical observation, over time they developed symbols and geometric designs to encode complex cycles and patterns. These symbols were carved into stone, incorporated into ceremonial layouts, and preserved through ritual practice. In doing so, astronomers created a system that allowed successive generations to access knowledge that would otherwise have been lost with the passing of elders. This careful curation of knowledge highlights the sophistication of Nubian intellectual culture. They understood that the value of observation lay not only in its immediate application but also in its preservation. The influence of Nubian astronomy extended beyond the practical and symbolic. It shaped philosophy, culture, and religion. The movements of stars, the phases of the moon, and the sun's trajectory were interpreted as messages from the universe. Certain celestial events were associated with the timing of rituals, the guidance of moral decisions, or the validation of leadership. Astronomy became a language through which humans could communicate with the cosmos, a framework for understanding destiny, morality, and the order of life itself. Trade and interaction with neighboring regions amplified the significance of these astronomers. Knowledge was exchanged along the Nile and across desert corridors, allowing Nubian techniques and insights to influence distant communities. The precision and innovation of Nubian astronomy suggest that these practices were part of a broader network of early science, a system that connected multiple cultures while maintaining distinct regional advancements. This interconnectedness highlights Nubia not as an isolated outpost but as an influential center of early intellectual achievement. Yet, despite these accomplishments, the astronomical elite faced constant pressures. Political upheaval, environmental change, and social dynamics threatened the continuity of their work. Maintaining accuracy required rigorous training, secrecy, and disciplined observation. Only a select few were entrusted with the most advanced techniques, creating a class of specialists whose knowledge was both powerful and precarious. This careful stewardship ensured the survival of astronomical wisdom but also contributed to its eventual obscurity, as much of the knowledge remained encoded in symbols, structures, and oral tradition rather than widely disseminated texts. The legacy of Nubian astronomy, however, endures in the landscape and in the silent testimony of aligned stones, burial mounds, and ceremonial sites. Each structure tells a story of observation, calculation, and profound understanding. These remnants challenge modern assumptions about the origins of scientific knowledge, revealing that long before the celebrated astronomers of Greece or Mesopotamia, Nubians were decoding the rhythms of the cosmos with extraordinary precision. As the kingdoms of Nubia expanded, so too did the ambition of their astronomers. They moved beyond immediate survival needs, exploring cycles that unfolded over decades or even centuries. Their work involved the long-term tracking of solar, lunar, and stellar phenomena, anticipating events far beyond the human lifespan. This commitment to cumulative knowledge demonstrates a remarkable intellectual foresight and dedication to understanding the universe, a legacy that positions Nubia as a center of scientific innovation long before history formally acknowledged its contributions. The more we explore this ancient civilization, the clearer it becomes that Nubia's astronomers were architects of both society and time. They integrated observation, mathematics, and spiritual insight into a cohesive system that shaped culture, governance, and philosophy. And although much of their work was lost to the passage of time, the surviving traces offer a glimpse into a civilization whose understanding of the heavens was astonishingly advanced, an enduring reminder that human curiosity and intellect can transcend centuries, leaving a mark that waits patiently to be rediscovered. The River Nile, winding through the heart of Nubia, was more than a source of water. It was the lifeblood of civilization, the axis around which culture, trade, and knowledge revolved. For the early Nubian astronomers, the Nile was both a practical guide and a metaphor for the rhythms of the cosmos. Its predictable flood cycles mirrored the celestial patterns they observed in the night sky, and its movement through the land offered a natural laboratory for understanding time, measurement, and cause and effect. By correlating the rising of Sirius with the inundation of the Nile, they discovered a connection between earthly and celestial cycles, a synchronization that formed the foundation of their scientific and cultural worldview. These astronomers were meticulous in their observations. Over generations, they recorded the timing of celestial events with astounding accuracy. They observed the sun's trajectory across the horizon at solstices, mapped lunar phases, and tracked the movements of key stars. Each observation was cross-referenced with environmental events: the flooding of the Nile, seasonal migrations of animals, or the growth cycles of crops. This empirical approach demonstrates that Nubian science was rooted in direct observation and long-term data collection, a method strikingly modern in its rigor. The astronomers were building predictive models centuries before the term science existed. Beyond prediction, astronomy became a tool of social cohesion and cultural identity. Ceremonial centers were constructed in alignment with significant celestial events, serving as gathering points for communities. These rituals, timed with precision, reinforced collective memory and social order. When the sun rose directly between two monoliths on the day of the solstice, it was not merely a spectacle. It was an affirmation of knowledge, a demonstration of the astronomer's authority, and a reminder of humanity's connection to the cosmos. People came to see themselves as part of a larger, ordered universe, their lives entwined with rhythms they could observe, interpret, and respect. The techniques employed by Nubian astronomers were surprisingly sophisticated. They made use of sightlines, shadow-casting objects, and rudimentary instruments to measure angles and distances. Observations were repeated across seasons and years, ensuring accuracy and consistency. Some ceremonial sites appear to track precession, the slow shift of the Earth's axis, long before it was recognized elsewhere. Others may record lunar cycles and eclipses, hinting at an awareness of astronomical phenomena that modern historians once thought beyond the reach of ancient African civilizations. The precision and foresight of these systems challenge assumptions about the development of early science and compel a reevaluation of Nubia's role in the history of astronomy. Training for these astronomers was arduous and exacting. Apprentices were selected for their aptitude and dedication, often spending decades under the mentorship of elder practitioners. Their education was holistic, combining direct observation, memorization of patterns, geometric calculation, and symbolic representation. Knowledge was transmitted orally and through ritual, with stone markers and aligned structures serving as enduring references. This system ensured continuity, allowing successive generations to refine predictions and expand their understanding. The combination of practice, observation, and encoded memory represents a sophisticated educational methodology that rivaled contemporary systems in other regions. The influence of Nubian astronomy extended into governance and politics. Kings and queens relied on celestial predictions to make critical decisions, from agricultural planning to military campaigns. A ruler who aligned policies with astronomical insight gained legitimacy and authority. Astronomers became advisors, intermediaries between rulers and the universe, their interpretations guiding both practical and ceremonial action. In some cases, they may have deliberately used the mystique of the heavens to consolidate power, ensuring that knowledge remained a form of leverage as well as enlightenment. In doing so, the astronomers intertwined science with political and spiritual authority, shaping the very structure of Nubian society. Trade and communication networks further enhanced the astronomers' reach. Knowledge traveled along the Nile and across desert routes, connecting settlements and facilitating comparative observation. Astronomers could confirm patterns, refine calculations, and share innovations, creating a collaborative scientific culture across vast distances. This exchange highlights Nubia's role not as an isolated civilization but as an active participant in early intellectual networks. Their methods influenced neighboring regions, subtly shaping the broader trajectory of scientific thought in Northeast Africa, even if recognition came much later. Despite their accomplishments, Nubian astronomers faced numerous challenges. Environmental fluctuations, political instability, and the fragility of oral transmission posed threats to the continuity of knowledge. To protect their discoveries, they cultivated secrecy, passing advanced techniques only to trusted apprentices. These measures preserved accuracy but also contributed to the gradual obscurity of their achievements. Much of what they knew was encoded in physical alignments, ritual practice, and symbolic language, hidden from outsiders and, eventually, from history itself. Yet, even in this secrecy, the legacy of Nubian astronomy endures. Stone alignments, ceremonial centers, and burial mounds reveal an extraordinary understanding of celestial cycles. These remnants demonstrate that Nubia was a center of advanced observational science, where knowledge was systematically acquired, preserved, and applied for the benefit of society. They force modern observers to reconsider the narrative that scientific progress originated exclusively in Europe or the Near East, revealing instead a rich and sophisticated African contribution to humanity's understanding of the cosmos. The deeper we delve into Nubia's astronomical heritage, the more we recognize the remarkable vision of its people. They were not merely observers of nature. They were architects of time, merging empirical study with spiritual insight, cultural cohesion, and political strategy. Their work reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge has always been a human endeavor, shaped by curiosity, necessity, and ambition. And as the stars continue their silent paths across the Nubian sky, they bear witness to a civilization whose intellectual achievements were centuries ahead of their time, waiting to be rediscovered and celebrated. In the heart of Nubia, the night sky was not a distant, abstract canvas. It was a living, breathing map of time, destiny, and survival. For the astronomers who dedicated their lives to its study, each star, each planetary movement, and each shifting shadow carried meaning. These were not idle observations for curiosity's sake. They were lifelines, tools for anticipating the cycles that governed every aspect of human existence. The rising of Sirius, the alignment of Orion's belt, the position of the moon, all were signals that dictated when to plant, when to harvest, and when to prepare for the harshest months of the year. Life and death hung upon the precision of their calculations, and these scholars understood the weight of that responsibility. The astronomical systems developed in Nubia were remarkably sophisticated. They relied on careful observation of patterns repeated over decades, tracking both solar and lunar cycles with astonishing precision. Shadows cast by monoliths and poles were measured, recorded, and interpreted in ways that allowed prediction of solstices, equinoxes, and even eclipses. Some of the stone circles constructed during this era aligned to stars that rise only once every several decades, demonstrating that these astronomers were thinking on a timescale far beyond immediate survival. Their observations were cumulative, refined over generations, and integrated into a framework that connected celestial cycles with the rhythms of human society. Central to this achievement was the institutionalization of knowledge. Nubian astronomers were organized into hierarchies, often tied to royal courts or ceremonial centers. Young apprentices were chosen for their memory, discipline, and observational skill, then trained under the watchful guidance of elders. Their education was both rigorous and holistic. Geometry, arithmetic, symbolic representation, and hands-on observation formed the foundation of their curriculum. It was a system designed not only to transmit knowledge but to ensure its refinement and expansion across generations. Accuracy was paramount, for a miscalculation could disrupt the very social and economic structures the knowledge supported. The astronomers' influence extended deeply into governance. Kings and rulers depended on their predictions for agricultural planning, religious observances, and strategic decision-making. An eclipse, an unusual planetary alignment, or the early flooding of the Nile could carry immense political significance, interpreted as omens or divine messages. In this way, astronomy was not merely a science. It was a form of authority, a language through which rulers asserted legitimacy and maintained social order. The astronomers, by controlling access to this knowledge, became indispensable advisors, their insights shaping both the spiritual and practical direction of Nubian society. Yet their work was far from purely political. Astronomy was woven into the spiritual and cultural fabric of Nubia. Ceremonial centers, sacred stones, and burial mounds were carefully aligned with celestial events, creating a landscape where the heavens and the earth intersected. Rituals timed with solstices or star risings were not mere spectacle. They were acts of cosmic synchronization, binding communities to a sense of order and meaning. The stars themselves were imbued with personality and narrative. Constellations served as guides, omens, and symbols of human morality and destiny. Knowledge of the heavens, therefore, carried both intellectual and spiritual weight. Trade and communication amplified the reach of this astronomical knowledge. Along the Nile and across desert corridors, techniques and insights traveled, allowing distant settlements to coordinate observations and refine methods. Nubian astronomers were not isolated. They were part of an early scientific network, exchanging information, verifying calculations, and collectively advancing understanding. Their influence likely extended into neighboring regions, subtly shaping practices in Egypt and beyond, even if later histories minimized or ignored their contributions. The astronomers' methods were ingenious in their simplicity and sophistication. Using basic tools, poles, stones, sightlines, they could measure angles and track celestial events with precision that astonishes modern researchers. Repetition, patience, and meticulous record-keeping allowed them to detect long-term cycles, including precession and other subtle astronomical phenomena that would not be formally recognized until millennia later. This blend of empirical observation and interpretive skill reveals a culture that valued knowledge for its predictive and explanatory power, marrying science with philosophical insight. Despite their elevated status, Nubian astronomers operated under constant pressure. Environmental fluctuations, political instability, and social change threatened the continuity of their work. Knowledge was carefully guarded and transmitted only to trusted apprentices to preserve accuracy and authority. This secrecy ensured survival of sophisticated techniques but also contributed to the eventual obscurity of Nubia's astronomical legacy. For centuries, their achievements were hidden from broader historical recognition, waiting to be rediscovered by modern scholarship. And yet, the remnants of their brilliance endure. Aligned stones, ceremonial complexes, and symbolic markers reveal a civilization that understood the heavens with astonishing clarity. These artifacts challenge conventional narratives of the origins of scientific thought, demonstrating that Nubia was not a peripheral player but a center of advanced observation, calculation, and philosophical reflection. The meticulous work of these astronomers shows a people deeply attuned to both the cosmos and the human condition, whose intellectual achievements continue to resonate across millennia. In studying these sites, modern researchers glimpse a civilization that treated astronomy as a comprehensive framework for life itself. It was not simply about predicting the seasons or flood cycles. It was about harmonizing human existence with the vast, predictable, yet awe-inspiring movements of the universe. Nubian astronomers were architects of time, society, and understanding, bridging empirical observation with spiritual and political insight. Their legacy invites us to rethink our assumptions about early scientific achievement and to marvel at a civilization whose intellect and foresight were far ahead of their time, leaving stones that still speak to the sky and to us today. The deserts of Nubia may appear empty at first glance, but hidden among the sands and rocky plains are traces of a civilization whose intellectual ambition rivaled the greatest of the ancient world. By the time Nubia's early kingdoms were flourishing along the Nile, astronomy had moved far beyond mere survival. It had become a sophisticated discipline that shaped every aspect of society, from agriculture to governance, from ritual to philosophy. Nubian astronomers were not simply observers of the sky. They were interpreters of cosmic patterns, capable of predicting natural events, guiding political decisions, and weaving the rhythms of the universe into the fabric of daily life. Their work demonstrated a precision and foresight that would astonish even modern scholars. At the heart of this knowledge was the principle that the cosmos and earthly life were interconnected. The rising and setting of specific stars, the phases of the moon, and the movements of the sun were all understood to have tangible consequences on human affairs. The heliacal rising of Sirius, for example, signaled the approaching Nile flood, a moment critical for agriculture, trade, and the sustenance of entire communities. These observations were not sporadic. They were systematic, repeated year after year, meticulously recorded and interpreted. Each generation refined the observations of the previous one, creating a cumulative body of knowledge that allowed Nubians to anticipate events with remarkable accuracy. This integration of astronomy into societal structure was extraordinary. Ceremonial centers, burial sites, and ritual complexes were deliberately aligned with celestial events. Stones were placed with precision to mark solstices and equinoxes, or to track the rising of key stars and constellations. Some sites suggest an awareness of longer-term astronomical phenomena, including precession and eclipses, indicating that Nubian astronomers were thinking on timescales far beyond the immediate needs of their society. The landscape itself became an instrument and a record, encoding knowledge that could be read across generations and even across centuries. The training of astronomers was both rigorous and highly selective. Young apprentices were chosen for their ability to observe, memorize, and analyze. Under the guidance of elder astronomers, they learned to interpret patterns in the sky, calculate cycles, and encode observations symbolically in stones, ceremonial layouts, and ritual practices. Accuracy was paramount, for their predictions could influence the timing of harvests, the outcome of military campaigns, or the legitimacy of rulers. This educational system ensured continuity and precision, safeguarding knowledge even amid political upheaval or environmental change. Astronomy in Nubia also carried profound spiritual significance. The movements of celestial bodies were interpreted as messages from the cosmos, linking human life to universal order. Constellations and stars became symbols of destiny, morality, and divine authority. Rituals were timed to coincide with specific celestial events, creating moments of alignment between humans and the universe. The astronomers themselves became intermediaries between the cosmos and society, blending empirical observation with philosophical insight. In this way, astronomy was inseparable from culture, politics, and religion, a comprehensive system for understanding and shaping the world. Trade and communication networks enhanced the reach and refinement of this knowledge. Along the Nile and across desert corridors, information about celestial phenomena traveled from one settlement to another. Observations were compared, verified, and incorporated into broader systems of understanding. Nubia, far from being an isolated civilization, was part of a network of early scientific inquiry. Techniques developed by its astronomers may have influenced neighboring regions, subtly shaping the intellectual landscape of Northeast Africa, even if mainstream history has often overlooked these contributions. The methods employed by Nubian astronomers were deceptively simple yet profoundly effective. Using tools such as sightlines, shadow-casting poles, and horizon markers, they could calculate angles, track star movements, and predict solstices and eclipses. Observations were repeated systematically, ensuring accuracy and allowing for long-term forecasting. Some alignments suggest that Nubians detected cyclical phenomena like precession and lunar variations long before they were formally recognized in other civilizations. Their ability to translate empirical observation into predictive knowledge demonstrates both ingenuity and a sophisticated understanding of mathematics and geometry. Yet, the astronomers' elevated status carried risk. Political shifts, rivalries, and environmental challenges could threaten the preservation of knowledge. To safeguard their discoveries, they cultivated secrecy, passing advanced methods only to trusted apprentices. While this ensured accuracy and continuity, it also contributed to the gradual obscurity of Nubia's achievements. Much of their knowledge was encoded in structures, symbols, and ritual, making it invisible to outsiders and leaving modern historians only fragments to piece together. Despite these obstacles, the legacy of Nubian astronomy endures. Aligned stones, ceremonial centers, and burial mounds bear witness to a civilization whose intellectual achievements rivaled those of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and beyond. These artifacts force us to reconsider long-held assumptions about the origins of scientific thought, highlighting Nubia as a center of innovation, observation, and philosophical reflection. The meticulous work of its astronomers reveals a people deeply attuned to the cosmos, capable of integrating observation, calculation, and spiritual insight into a system that governed life itself. As we examine these remnants, it becomes clear that Nubian astronomers were more than observers. They were architects of time, society, and destiny. Their work spanned generations, building a legacy that combined empirical rigor with philosophical depth. They demonstrated that knowledge of the heavens could guide human life, shape political authority, and elevate cultural understanding. And though centuries of history have obscured much of their brilliance, the stones, mounds, and alignments they left behind continue to tell a story of foresight, ingenuity, and the enduring human desire to understand the universe. Across the wide, sun-scorched plains of Nubia, the remnants of an ancient civilization quietly testify to its extraordinary intellectual achievements. By the time Nubian kingdoms were fully established along the Nile, astronomy had evolved from a practical necessity into a sophisticated discipline that intertwined observation, culture, and power. It was no longer merely about predicting the annual floods or planting seasons. It had become a lens through which the people understood their place in the cosmos and their connection to the divine. The astronomers of Nubia were more than mere observers. They were the architects of knowledge, capable of measuring time, predicting celestial events, and shaping societal structures with precision that astonishes modern historians. The ceremonial centers of Nubia reveal the depth of this understanding. Stones and mounds were positioned with deliberate intent, creating alignments that corresponded to solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of significant stars. At sites such as Playa, some stones align to the stars of Orion's belt and even to patterns that suggest awareness of precessional movement, an astronomical phenomenon that would not be formally described for thousands of years elsewhere. These alignments were not the product of chance. They were carefully calculated through repeated observation and transmitted knowledge. Every shadow cast, every angle measured, carried layers of meaning and utility, blending empirical study with spiritual significance. Nubian astronomers were organized into hierarchies, often linked to royal courts or ceremonial centers. Their influence extended across politics, religion, and social organization. Kings relied on their guidance to determine the timing of agricultural activities, military campaigns, and religious festivals. An eclipse, a lunar phase, or the rising of a particular star could serve as a divine signal, influencing decisions with profound consequences. In this context, astronomers were not just scientists. They were advisors whose expertise could legitimize a ruler's authority or influence the course of entire communities. Their knowledge became a currency of power, creating a delicate balance between enlightenment and control. Training for these astronomers was intensive and highly selective. From a young age, apprentices were chosen for their aptitude in observation, memory, and analysis. They spent years under the tutelage of elder astronomers, learning to chart the movements of celestial bodies, calculate cycles, and interpret symbolic representations embedded in stone, ritual layouts, and oral traditions. Accuracy was critical. A miscalculation could threaten the timing of the Nile flood, disrupt harvests, or undermine the perceived legitimacy of rulers. By fostering a culture of meticulous observation and disciplined record-keeping, Nubian astronomers ensured that their knowledge could be transmitted and refined across generations, creating a cumulative body of expertise that was both resilient and advanced. Beyond practical applications, astronomy held immense cultural and spiritual significance. The movements of the stars, the phases of the moon, and the trajectory of the sun were interpreted as messages from the cosmos, guiding moral, spiritual, and societal decisions. Rituals were carefully timed with celestial events, transforming everyday life into a reflection of universal order. Constellations were not mere points of light. They were guides, omens, and symbolic mirrors of human experience. Through this lens, the heavens became a moral and philosophical framework, connecting the people of Nubia to a universe of patterns, cycles, and meaning. The methods employed by Nubian astronomers were ingenious in their simplicity. Using sightlines, shadow-casting poles, and horizon markers, they were able to measure angles, track star movements, and predict solstices and eclipses. Observations were repeated and compared year after year, producing remarkably accurate predictions of celestial events. Some alignments indicate a knowledge of precession, lunar cycles, and long-term astronomical phenomena, suggesting that Nubians were capable of thinking on timescales far beyond the immediate human lifespan. This demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of geometry, proportion, and empirical methodology, an intellectual achievement that challenges traditional narratives of scientific history. Trade and communication networks enhanced the reach and refinement of Nubian astronomical knowledge. Along the Nile and across desert corridors, techniques and insights were shared, allowing distant settlements to compare observations, verify calculations, and refine methodologies. Nubia was not an isolated civilization but part of a network of early intellectual exchange, influencing neighboring regions and contributing to a broader understanding of the cosmos. Despite the scarcity of written records, the transmission of knowledge through oral traditions, ceremonial alignments, and mentorship ensured that insights persisted across generations, leaving an enduring legacy that continues to intrigue researchers today. The astronomers' elevated status was not without risk. Environmental fluctuations, political instability, and rival factions threatened both the continuity and security of their work. Knowledge was closely guarded, passed only to trusted apprentices and collaborators. This secrecy ensured the precision and survival of their methods, but also contributed to the gradual obscurity of Nubia's achievements in the wider historical narrative. Much of their advanced understanding lay hidden in symbolic structures and ritualized practices, leaving modern historians with tantalizing clues rather than complete records. Despite these challenges, the legacy of Nubian astronomy is undeniable. Stone alignments, ceremonial complexes, and burial sites bear witness to a civilization capable of remarkable intellectual feats. They reveal a people who combined empirical observation with philosophical insight, using knowledge of the heavens to guide practical decisions, strengthen political authority, and shape cultural identity. The precision, foresight, and holistic nature of Nubian astronomical practice challenge conventional assumptions about the origins of science, revealing a civilization whose achievements were centuries ahead of their time. The more closely we examine these sites, the clearer it becomes that Nubian astronomers were not passive recorders of the sky but active interpreters and architects of knowledge. They harmonized empirical study with spiritual insight, governance, and cultural cohesion, creating a system that governed both the natural and human world. Their legacy reminds us that scientific ingenuity has often flourished in unexpected places, and that the pursuit of knowledge is a profoundly human endeavor, capable of transcending geography, time, and cultural memory. The stones and alignments that endure today are silent witnesses to this brilliance, a testimony to a civilization whose understanding of the cosmos continues to inspire awe and discovery. The deserts and riverbanks of Nubia, often seen as harsh and unyielding landscapes, were in reality the canvas upon which one of the most remarkable civilizations in human history inscribed its knowledge. By the time the Nubian kingdoms reached their height, astronomy had matured into a discipline that intertwined science, spirituality, and governance. The heavens were not simply observed. They were interpreted, measured, and codified into practical, cultural, and political frameworks that guided daily life. For the Nubian astronomers, understanding the sky was a matter of survival, societal cohesion, and even cosmic legitimacy. Their work reflected a deep intellectual curiosity, a disciplined methodology, and an astonishingly advanced awareness of celestial patterns. The ceremonial centers of Nubia, including the enigmatic site of Nabta Playa, demonstrate the sophistication of their astronomical knowledge. Massive stones and alignments correspond with the solstices, equinoxes, and rising of important stars such as Sirius and Orion's belt. Some of these alignments may even suggest knowledge of precession, a phenomenon that would not be formally recognized elsewhere for thousands of years. These constructions were the product of meticulous observation, repeated over generations, and encoded into the landscape as permanent markers of knowledge. Each stone, carefully positioned, functioned both as a scientific instrument and a cultural symbol, linking the terrestrial and celestial realms in a tangible way. The social role of astronomers in Nubian society was unique and complex. They were not simply advisors, they were integral to the functioning of the state. Kings and rulers relied on their guidance to predict the timing of the Nile flood, determine planting and harvest schedules, and even plan military campaigns. Celestial events could carry immense political significance. An eclipse or a rare planetary alignment might be interpreted as an omen, influencing public perception and strategic decisions. In this context, astronomers wielded power that extended beyond the empirical. Their interpretations carried spiritual authority and political weight, effectively making them mediators between the cosmos and human society. Training for these astronomers was rigorous, selective, and often lifelong. Young apprentices were chosen based on their observational skills, memory, and analytical ability. They studied under seasoned mentors, learning to chart the movements of celestial bodies, calculate cycles, and encode these patterns symbolically in ceremonial layouts or oral instruction. Accuracy was critical. A single error in prediction could have catastrophic consequences for agriculture, social stability, or political legitimacy. This apprenticeship system ensured that knowledge was preserved, refined, and expanded over generations, creating a cumulative body of expertise that could be transmitted with both precision and care. Nubian astronomy was not solely practical. It carried deep cultural and spiritual meaning. The movements of stars, the phases of the moon, and the trajectory of the sun were seen as messages from the universe, guiding human behavior, ethics, and ritual practice. Rituals and ceremonies were carefully timed with celestial events, creating a rhythm that harmonized human life with cosmic order. Constellations became narrative tools, guiding moral lessons, societal norms, and spiritual understanding. Through these interpretations, astronomy was deeply embedded in the worldview of Nubians, shaping both thought and action in ways that transcended the material realm. The tools and methods employed by Nubian astronomers were deceptively simple but highly effective. Using sightlines, shadow-casting poles, horizon markers, and repeated observation, they were able to measure angles, track stellar movements, and predict events like solstices, lunar cycles, and eclipses. Observations were systematically recorded and confirmed across generations, allowing for accurate long-term forecasting. Some alignments suggest an awareness of complex astronomical phenomena, demonstrating that Nubians were capable of thinking on timescales far beyond immediate survival, encompassing decades and even centuries. This sophistication reflects a culture that valued both precision and foresight, blending empirical observation with intellectual rigor. Trade and communication networks amplified the impact of Nubian astronomical knowledge. Along the Nile and across desert trade routes, insights were exchanged between settlements, allowing astronomers to verify calculations, refine methodologies, and share discoveries. Nubia was thus part of an early network of intellectual exchange, contributing to the broader trajectory of scientific thought in Northeast Africa. These exchanges reveal that Nubia was not an isolated outpost but an active hub of knowledge production, where observation, innovation, and collaboration intersected. Despite their elevated status, astronomers faced significant challenges. Political instability, environmental changes, and social upheaval threatened the continuity of knowledge. To protect their discoveries, advanced methods were often kept secret, passed only to trusted apprentices. While this safeguarded accuracy and intellectual authority, it also contributed to the eventual obscurity of Nubia's achievements in historical records. Much of their sophisticated knowledge remained encoded in physical structures, symbolic systems, and ritual practices, hidden from outsiders and waiting centuries to be rediscovered. The surviving evidence of Nubian astronomy is striking. Stone alignments, ceremonial complexes, and ritualized landscapes testify to a people capable of remarkable intellectual feats. These structures challenge conventional narratives of scientific history, demonstrating that sophisticated observation, calculation, and philosophical reflection flourished in Africa long before recognition by mainstream historiography. The precision, foresight, and holistic approach of Nubian astronomers reveal a civilization that harmonized empirical study, spiritual insight, and political strategy in ways that resonate even today. The legacy of Nubian astronomers is a testament to human curiosity, ingenuity, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. They were not merely passive observers. They were active interpreters of the cosmos, architects of societal order, and mediators between the celestial and human worlds. Their work reminds us that the story of scientific progress is not linear nor confined to a single region. It is global, complex, and often hidden. The stones and alignments they left behind are silent witnesses to a civilization whose understanding of the heavens was far ahead of its time, inviting modern observers to rediscover and honor a forgotten chapter in the history of human intelligence. The sands and rocky plains of Nubia conceal traces of a civilization whose intellectual achievements continue to astonish modern scholars. By the time the Nubian kingdoms had firmly established themselves along the Nile, astronomy had matured into a discipline that permeated every aspect of life. These were not mere stargazers. They were scholars, philosophers, and strategists whose observations of the heavens informed agriculture, governance, ritual, and even social hierarchy. For them, the sky was a living record, a framework within which human activity was understood, predicted, and harmonized with the natural and cosmic order. The heavens were a map, a calendar, and a guide, all at once, and the astronomers of Nubia were its interpreters. The ceremonial and ritual centers of Nubia, such as Nabta Playa, stand as enduring testaments to this knowledge. Stones and mounds were aligned with precision to the solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of significant stars. Some arrangements suggest awareness of astronomical phenomena such as the precession of the equinoxes, which would not be formally recognized in other civilizations for thousands of years. These constructions were not arbitrary. They were the product of repeated observation, meticulous calculation, and intergenerational transmission of knowledge. Each stone, each alignment, functioned as both a practical instrument and a symbolic marker, connecting earthly life to celestial order and embedding complex astronomical understanding into the very landscape of Nubia. Astronomers occupied a unique and influential position within Nubian society. Their expertise extended into governance, agriculture, and spiritual guidance. Kings and rulers depended on their predictions to plan the timing of the Nile's annual flood, coordinate agricultural activities, and even guide military campaigns. Celestial events were interpreted as omens, capable of affirming or undermining political authority. An eclipse, the unusual rising of a star, or a rare planetary alignment could influence public perception, strategic decisions, and ritual practices. In this context, astronomers were not only scientists. They were custodians of both knowledge and authority, their interpretations shaping society's understanding of fate, power, and order. Training for these astronomers was selective, demanding, and often lifelong. Promising youths were chosen for their keen observation, memory, and analytical skill. Apprentices spent years under the tutelage of experienced astronomers, learning to chart celestial movements, calculate cycles, and encode knowledge symbolically in ceremonial sites, stones, and oral traditions. Accuracy was critical. Miscalculations could imperil harvests, disrupt social stability, or challenge the legitimacy of rulers. The educational system ensured that knowledge was not only preserved but refined across generations, creating a cumulative intergenerational body of expertise that remained remarkably precise. The integration of astronomy into cultural and spiritual life was profound. Celestial movements were interpreted as messages from the universe, guiding moral, spiritual, and practical decisions. Rituals were meticulously timed with the rising and setting of stars, the phases of the moon, and the sun's trajectory, reinforcing the connection between human activity and cosmic order. Constellations and planetary patterns were imbued with narrative and symbolic meaning, serving as guides for morality, social conduct, and philosophical reflection. Astronomy was thus inseparable from culture. It provided a framework that connected the observable universe with human society, morality, and destiny. The tools and methodologies developed by Nubian astronomers were simple in material but sophisticated in design. Sightlines, shadow-casting poles, horizon markers, and systematic observation allowed precise measurement of angles, star movements, and solar cycles. Observations were repeated across seasons and years to ensure accuracy, producing predictive models capable of forecasting solstices, eclipses, lunar cycles, and even the long-term movements of celestial bodies. Certain alignments suggest knowledge of phenomena such as precession, indicating that Nubian astronomers thought on scales of decades and centuries, far beyond immediate practical needs. Their ability to convert empirical observation into predictive knowledge demonstrates a level of mathematical and geometric sophistication remarkable for the period. Trade and communication networks played a critical role in the dissemination and refinement of astronomical knowledge. Along the Nile and across desert trade routes, ideas, techniques, and observational data were exchanged between settlements. Astronomers could compare observations, refine methodologies, and confirm predictions, creating a collaborative scientific network across Nubia and neighboring regions. This exchange highlights that Nubia was not an isolated civilization but an active hub of intellectual development, contributing to the broader evolution of early scientific thought in Africa and beyond. Despite their elevated status, astronomers faced significant challenges. Political instability, environmental shifts, and social upheaval threatened the continuity of their knowledge. To preserve accuracy and authority, advanced techniques were closely guarded and passed only to trusted apprentices. While this secrecy ensured the survival of expertise, it also contributed to the historical obscurity of Nubia's achievements, leaving modern scholars to reconstruct their accomplishments from physical remnants, oral traditions, and symbolic representations. The surviving evidence, however, speaks volumes. Aligned stones, ceremonial complexes, and ritualized landscapes bear testimony to a civilization capable of extraordinary intellectual feats. These artifacts challenge conventional narratives that situate the origins of scientific thought primarily in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, revealing that Nubia was a center of innovation, observation, and philosophical reflection. The meticulous precision, foresight, and holistic approach of Nubian astronomers demonstrate a civilization that harmonized empirical study, spiritual insight, and political strategy in ways that remain profoundly instructive. As modern researchers study these sites, it becomes evident that Nubian astronomers were architects of both time and society. They integrated observation, calculation, ritual, and governance into a unified framework, shaping not only practical outcomes but also cultural and spiritual understanding. Their legacy is a testament to human ingenuity, curiosity, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. Although centuries of history have obscured much of their brilliance, the stones, alignments, and ceremonial complexes they left behind continue to inspire awe, inviting us to rediscover and honor a civilization whose understanding of the cosmos was astonishingly advanced, and whose intellectual achievements resonate even today. The deserts and river valleys of Nubia hold secrets that, for centuries, were almost lost to history. Among the most remarkable of these secrets is the astronomical knowledge developed by its ancient civilizations, a knowledge that, in many ways, surpassed contemporary understanding in other regions. By the time Nubian kingdoms flourished along the Nile, astronomy had become far more than a practical tool. It was a discipline that defined culture, governance, and spiritual life. Observing the heavens was not a mere curiosity. It was a necessity, a form of power, and a bridge between the human and the divine. Nubian astronomers were, in essence, the keepers of time and destiny, their insights guiding the rhythm of society itself. The sophistication of Nubian astronomy is evident in the alignment of ceremonial centers and sacred stones. Sites such as Nabta Playa showcase monumental arrangements deliberately oriented to solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of key stars like Sirius and Orion's belt. These alignments were not simple markers. Some suggest an understanding of complex astronomical phenomena such as precession, a knowledge thought to have been discovered much later in history elsewhere. Each stone, mound, or alignment functioned both as a scientific instrument and a symbolic message, linking the terrestrial world to celestial cycles and encoding knowledge intended to last for generations. The scale and precision of these structures indicate an advanced grasp of geometry, observation, and long-term planning. Astronomers in Nubia occupied a position of both prestige and responsibility. They were advisors to kings and rulers, guiding agricultural planning, military campaigns, and religious observances based on the patterns of the sky. An eclipse or the unexpected appearance of a star could be interpreted as a sign from the heavens, influencing strategic decisions and the legitimacy of leadership. In this way, astronomy intertwined with politics and spirituality, granting the astronomers a unique authority. They were interpreters of fate, mediators between the human and cosmic realms, and custodians of a knowledge that was both practical and sacred. The education of these astronomers was highly structured and rigorous. Promising youths were selected for their observational skill, memory, and analytical ability, and they underwent years of apprenticeship under experienced astronomers. Training included meticulous tracking of celestial bodies, calculation of cycles, and the symbolic encoding of knowledge in stones, ceremonial layouts, and oral traditions. Precision was essential. A single error in predicting the flood of the Nile or the timing of a ritual could have devastating consequences. This careful mentorship ensured the continuity and refinement of knowledge, creating an intellectual legacy that was cumulative and intergenerational. The role of astronomy extended far beyond survival and political utility. Celestial events were interpreted as messages from the cosmos, guiding ethical, spiritual, and philosophical understanding. Rituals were timed to align with the sun, moon, and stars, creating a rhythm that harmonized human life with the cosmos. Constellations were narrative tools, symbols, and guides that shaped morality, community behavior, and philosophical reflection. In this sense, Nubian astronomy was not only a science but also a language through which the universe communicated with humanity, a framework for understanding life, destiny, and the moral order. The methodologies developed by Nubian astronomers reveal remarkable ingenuity. With relatively simple tools, sightlines, shadow-casting poles, horizon markers, they could achieve precise measurements, track the movements of stars, and predict events such as solstices, eclipses, and lunar cycles. Observations were repeated and verified over long periods, enabling accurate long-term forecasting. Certain alignments suggest awareness of celestial cycles spanning decades or even centuries, indicating an advanced understanding of astronomical phenomena well ahead of their time. This sophistication underscores a culture that valued precision, foresight, and the integration of observation into both practical and philosophical systems. Trade and communication networks further enhanced the scope and refinement of Nubian astronomical knowledge. Along the Nile and through desert trade corridors, information about celestial events traveled between settlements. This exchange allowed astronomers to compare observations, refine calculations, and integrate findings into a broader system of understanding. Nubia thus functioned as an active hub of early intellectual exchange, its astronomers contributing to a wider scientific and cultural network. Far from being isolated, Nubian astronomy played a role in shaping the intellectual landscape of Northeast Africa and influencing neighboring civilizations. Despite their elevated status, Nubian astronomers faced significant challenges. Environmental changes, political instability, and social upheaval posed constant threats to the preservation of knowledge. To safeguard the continuity and accuracy of their work, advanced techniques were passed only to trusted apprentices. While this secrecy preserved their expertise, it also contributed to the historical obscurity of Nubia's accomplishments. Much of their sophisticated knowledge remained encoded in stone alignments, symbolic systems, and ritualized practice, hidden from outsiders and waiting centuries to be rediscovered. The surviving evidence, however, demonstrates the remarkable achievements of Nubian astronomers. Stone alignments, ceremonial centers, and ritualized landscapes bear testimony to a civilization capable of extraordinary intellectual feats. These artifacts challenge conventional narratives that situate the origins of scientific knowledge solely in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, highlighting Nubia as a center of observation, calculation, and philosophical insight. Their holistic approach integrated empirical observation, spiritual understanding, and governance, creating a system that guided society while reflecting a profound connection to the cosmos. In examining these remnants, it becomes clear that Nubian astronomers were not mere recorders of celestial events, but active interpreters and architects of knowledge. They harmonized scientific observation with cultural, spiritual, and political structures, demonstrating that the pursuit of knowledge could shape both human and cosmic order. Their legacy stands as a testament to human ingenuity, curiosity, and foresight, reminding us that sophisticated understanding of the universe has often emerged in places history has overlooked. The stones, alignments, and ceremonial complexes they left behind continue to inspire awe, offering a glimpse into a civilization whose intellectual brilliance was centuries ahead of its time and whose lessons remain relevant to this day. The deserts of Nubia, stretching endlessly under the relentless sun, hide within them a story that has long been obscured by the sands of time. This is the story of a civilization whose understanding of the heavens was not only advanced but transformative, influencing every aspect of life along the Nile. By the time Nubian kingdoms had established themselves as centers of power, astronomy had evolved from a practical tool for survival into a comprehensive discipline that informed culture, governance, and spirituality. The sky was a map, a clock, and a guidebook, and the astronomers who studied it held knowledge that shaped both daily life and the fate of entire communities. Central to Nubian astronomy was the concept that the cosmos and human life were inseparably connected. The rising and setting of stars, the phases of the moon, and the movements of the sun were all seen as signals that had direct consequences on human affairs. The heliacal rising of Sirius, for instance, heralded the approaching inundation of the Nile, a moment critical for agriculture, trade, and societal stability. These observations were systematic, repeated annually, and recorded across generations, allowing astronomers to refine predictions with remarkable accuracy. The careful calibration of celestial and terrestrial events demonstrated not only empirical skill, but also a profound understanding of patterns, cycles, and causality. The ceremonial centers of Nubia were both laboratories and monuments of astronomical knowledge. At sites such as Nabta Playa, enormous stones and alignments mark solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of significant stars. Some arrangements suggest awareness of complex astronomical phenomena, including precession, a subtle wobble of the Earth's axis that affects star positions over millennia. Such sophistication implies that Nubian astronomers were thinking on timescales far beyond immediate survival or practical necessity. Every stone placement, every sight line, and every shadow-casting pole was deliberate, a combination of scientific instrument and symbolic marker, linking human society with the vast rhythms of the cosmos. Astronomers held a unique and powerful role in Nubian society. They were not merely scholars. They were advisors to kings, strategists, and spiritual guides. Their predictions guided agricultural schedules, informed military campaigns, and dictated the timing of religious ceremonies. Celestial events could carry immense political weight, as eclipses, unusual planetary alignments, or unexpected star risings were interpreted as messages from the heavens. In this way, astronomy became intertwined with authority, and those who mastered its knowledge wielded influence over both rulers and the people. The astronomers' ability to interpret the sky made them indispensable and often elevated them to positions of considerable prestige. Education and training for Nubian astronomers were meticulous and demanding. Apprentices were carefully selected for their observational skills, memory, and analytical aptitude. They spent years under the guidance of experienced mentors, learning to track celestial bodies, calculate cycles, and encode their knowledge symbolically in ceremonial sites, stones, and oral traditions. Precision was essential, as mistakes could have serious consequences for the community's survival and for the authority of rulers who depended on these predictions. This rigorous system ensured continuity and refinement, allowing astronomical knowledge to be preserved and improved across generations, forming a sophisticated and enduring intellectual tradition. Astronomy in Nubia was deeply woven into culture and spirituality. Celestial movements were interpreted as messages from the universe, providing guidance for moral behavior, ritual practice, and philosophical reflection. Ceremonies were timed to align with significant celestial events, creating a rhythm that connected human activity with cosmic order. Constellations were imbued with narrative and symbolic significance, serving as tools for storytelling, ethical instruction, and guidance. The sky was both a canvas and a teacher, and those who understood its patterns could bridge the natural and spiritual worlds, bringing meaning and structure to human life. The tools and methodologies used by Nubian astronomers reveal remarkable ingenuity. Simple instruments such as sightlines, shadow-casting poles, and horizon markers allowed for precise measurement of angles, the tracking of star movements, and the prediction of solar and lunar cycles. Observations were repeated systematically across seasons and generations to ensure reliability and accuracy. Certain alignments suggest awareness of long-term phenomena like precession and lunar cycles, indicating that Nubians were capable of thinking on scales of decades, even centuries. This demonstrates a level of mathematical and geometric sophistication that rivals or exceeds contemporary practices elsewhere. Trade and communication networks amplified the reach and refinement of Nubian astronomical knowledge. Along the Nile and across desert corridors, observations, techniques, and insights were shared between settlements. This collaborative approach allowed for verification, refinement, and the dissemination of discoveries, positioning Nubia as a hub of intellectual exchange. These interactions reveal that Nubia was not an isolated civilization but an integral part of an early scientific and cultural network, influencing neighboring regions and contributing to a broader understanding of the cosmos in Northeast Africa. Yet the astronomers' work was not without peril. Political upheaval, environmental shifts, and social instability threatened the preservation of their knowledge. To safeguard it, advanced techniques were passed only to trusted apprentices, creating a culture of secrecy that preserved accuracy but also contributed to historical obscurity. Much of their knowledge remained encoded in stones, ritual practices, and symbolic systems, invisible to outsiders and only partially recoverable by modern researchers. Despite these challenges, the legacy of Nubian astronomy is undeniable. Stone alignments, ceremonial sites, and ritualized landscapes testify to a civilization capable of extraordinary intellectual and spiritual achievements. These remnants challenge traditional narratives of scientific history, demonstrating that Nubia was a center of observation, calculation, and philosophical insight. The holistic integration of empirical knowledge, cultural practice, and political influence reveals a civilization whose understanding of the cosmos was centuries ahead of its time, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire awe and curiosity. The deserts and river valleys of Nubia conceal a story of intellect, observation, and ambition that has remained largely hidden for millennia. By the time the Nubian kingdoms had flourished along the Nile, astronomy was no longer a simple tool for survival. It had become a sophisticated discipline that shaped every aspect of society. The sky was a canvas of knowledge, and the astronomers who studied it were the interpreters of time, destiny, and order. Their observations dictated agricultural cycles, guided political decisions, informed religious practices, and even influenced social hierarchy. To understand the heavens was to understand life itself, and the astronomers of Nubia held a power that extended far beyond simple measurement. Central to Nubian astronomy was the concept of interconnection between the cosmos and human affairs. The rising and setting of stars, the phases of the moon, and the movement of the sun were all understood to signal events that had direct consequences on society. The heliacal rising of Sirius, for example, heralded the arrival of the Nile flood, a moment critical for agriculture and sustenance. These celestial patterns were not fleeting observations but part of a carefully documented system, repeated year after year and refined across generations. This allowed Nubian astronomers to predict events with remarkable accuracy and to align human activity with the rhythms of the natural world. The physical evidence of their astronomical expertise is striking. Sites such as Nabta Playa feature enormous stones arranged with deliberate precision to mark solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of significant stars. Some alignments indicate knowledge of long-term phenomena, including the precession of the Earth's axis, a concept that would not be formally recognized in other civilizations for thousands of years. These structures were not merely functional. They were symbolic, serving as both instruments for measurement and representations of the universe's order. Every stone, sightline, and shadow played a role in connecting human society with cosmic rhythms, embedding sophisticated knowledge into the landscape itself. Astronomers held a unique place in Nubian society, wielding both intellectual and political influence. They advised kings on agricultural schedules, military campaigns, and religious ceremonies, interpreting celestial events as omens or messages from the divine. An eclipse, the unusual appearance of a star, or a planetary alignment could affect public perception, strategic decisions, and ceremonial timing. In this way, astronomy was not merely scientific. It was a language of power, with astronomers serving as mediators between rulers, the populace, and the cosmos. Their ability to interpret celestial signals ensured their indispensability, elevating them to positions of prestige and authority. Education and training for these astronomers were highly structured and rigorous. Promising youths were selected for their observational skills, analytical ability, and memory. Apprentices spent years learning to track celestial movements, calculate cycles, and encode observations symbolically through stones, ceremonial layouts, and oral tradition. Precision was paramount. Miscalculations could disrupt agriculture, challenge political authority, or interfere with ceremonial practices. The careful mentorship and gradual transfer of knowledge ensured continuity and refinement across generations, creating a sophisticated body of expertise that was both durable and advanced. Nubian astronomy was deeply integrated into cultural and spiritual life. Celestial events were not merely observed. They were interpreted as guidance from the universe, informing morality, ritual practice, and philosophical reflection. Ceremonies and festivals were timed to align with significant celestial events, linking human activity with cosmic order. Constellations were imbued with narrative and symbolic meaning, serving as guides for ethical conduct, social cohesion, and philosophical insight. Through this integration, astronomy became both a scientific practice and a spiritual framework, harmonizing practical knowledge with existential understanding. The tools and techniques employed by Nubian astronomers were simple yet highly effective. Sightlines, shadow-casting poles, and horizon markers enabled precise measurement of angles, star movements, and solar cycles. Observations were repeated systematically over seasons and generations, allowing accurate long-term predictions of solstices, eclipses, lunar cycles, and planetary movements. Certain alignments suggest awareness of precession and other subtle astronomical phenomena, indicating that Nubians were capable of thinking on scales of decades and centuries. This combination of observation, calculation, and prediction demonstrates a level of intellectual sophistication that rivals or exceeds contemporary practices elsewhere. Trade and communication networks expanded the influence and refinement of Nubian astronomical knowledge. Along the Nile and through desert corridors, information about celestial events traveled between settlements. This exchange allowed astronomers to verify calculations, refine methods, and integrate new observations into a shared system of knowledge. Nubia thus functioned as a hub of early intellectual exchange, contributing to broader scientific understanding in Northeast Africa. These interactions highlight that Nubia was far from isolated. It was a center of learning, collaboration, and innovation. Despite their elevated status, astronomers faced significant challenges. Political upheaval, environmental change, and social instability threatened the continuity of their work. To safeguard their knowledge, advanced techniques were passed only to trusted apprentices, creating a culture of secrecy. While this preserved the accuracy and authority of their observations, it also contributed to the eventual obscurity of Nubia's astronomical achievements, leaving only fragments for modern researchers to reconstruct. Yet the surviving evidence speaks volumes. Aligned stones, ceremonial complexes, and ritual landscapes testify to a civilization capable of extraordinary intellectual and spiritual accomplishment. These remnants challenge conventional narratives that place the origins of advanced scientific knowledge solely in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, revealing Nubia as a center of observation, calculation, and philosophical insight. The precision, foresight, and holistic approach of Nubian astronomers demonstrate a civilization whose understanding of the cosmos was centuries ahead of its time, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire awe, curiosity, and a re-evaluation of history itself. The Nubian deserts and river valleys, often perceived as barren and unforgiving, were in fact the cradle of one of the most advanced astronomical traditions of the ancient world. By the time Nubian kingdoms were firmly established along the Nile, astronomy had transcended its utilitarian roots and become a sophisticated discipline that influenced every aspect of society. These astronomers were not simply observers of the heavens. They were the interpreters of time, destiny, and cosmic order. Their knowledge guided agriculture, informed governance, shaped spiritual practices, and even underpinned social hierarchies. In essence, to understand the cosmos was to understand life itself, and those who mastered this knowledge held a power that extended across both the tangible and the spiritual worlds. At the heart of Nubian astronomical practice was the belief in a profound connection between the cosmos and human existence. The rising and setting of stars, the phases of the moon, and the movements of the sun were all considered indicators with tangible consequences. The heliacal rising of Sirius, for example, marked the approach of the Nile's annual flood, a pivotal event that determined the success of agriculture and the sustenance of entire communities. Such observations were not fleeting or casual. They were methodical, documented, and refined over generations. Each passing year allowed astronomers to perfect their predictions, transforming the heavens into a precise calendar that regulated the rhythm of life along the Nile. The architectural and ceremonial landscapes of Nubia reflect the sophistication of this astronomical knowledge. Sites such as Nabta Playa and other ritual centers feature massive stone alignments precisely positioned to correspond with solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of significant stars. Some alignments even suggest an awareness of long-term phenomena, such as the precession of the Earth's axis, a discovery that would not be formally acknowledged elsewhere for millennia. Each stone, mound, and sightline was deliberately placed, functioning both as a scientific instrument and as a symbolic representation of the cosmos. These constructions transformed the physical landscape into a map of celestial order, embedding complex knowledge into the terrain itself. Astronomers in Nubia occupied a position of both prestige and responsibility. Their counsel was sought by kings and rulers for planning agricultural cycles, coordinating military campaigns, and timing religious rituals. Celestial events carried immense political and spiritual weight. An eclipse, an unexpected star, or the alignment of planets could be interpreted as omens influencing both public perception and strategic decisions. In this context, astronomers were more than scientists. They were intermediaries between the heavens and human society, mediators of fate and cosmic order, whose interpretations could affect the governance and stability of entire kingdoms. The training of Nubian astronomers was rigorous, selective, and highly structured. Young apprentices were chosen for their ability to observe, memorize, and analyze. Under the guidance of seasoned mentors, they learned to chart the movements of celestial bodies, calculate complex cycles, and encode knowledge symbolically in stone arrangements, ceremonial layouts, and oral traditions. Accuracy was paramount. A single miscalculation could disrupt the timing of the Nile flood, misalign agricultural planning, or challenge the authority of rulers. This meticulous system ensured that astronomical knowledge was preserved, refined, and expanded across generations, forming an intergenerational legacy of intellectual rigor. Astronomy in Nubia was not merely a practical science. It was deeply integrated into the spiritual and cultural fabric of society. Celestial phenomena were interpreted as messages from the cosmos, providing guidance on morality, ethics, ritual, and philosophy. Ceremonies and festivals were timed to coincide with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, harmonizing human activity with cosmic rhythms. Constellations were imbued with narrative, symbolic, and moral significance, serving as guides for communal behavior, philosophical reflection, and spiritual insight. In this way, astronomy was both a tool for survival and a framework for understanding humanity's place in the universe. The methods and tools employed by Nubian astronomers, though simple in appearance, reveal profound sophistication. Sightlines, shadow-casting poles, and horizon markers allowed precise measurement of angles, the tracking of stars, and prediction of solstices, lunar cycles, and eclipses. Observations were systematically repeated across seasons and generations, allowing astronomers to develop predictive models with remarkable accuracy. Certain alignments suggest awareness of long-term astronomical cycles, including precession, which indicates that Nubians were capable of thinking in scales of decades and centuries. Their ability to transform empirical observation into predictive knowledge demonstrates an advanced understanding of mathematics, geometry, and systematic methodology. Trade and communication networks facilitated the dissemination and refinement of Nubian astronomical knowledge. Observations and insights traveled along the Nile and across desert corridors, allowing settlements to compare data, verify calculations, and refine methodologies. Nubia functioned as a hub of intellectual exchange, contributing to a broader scientific and cultural network in Northeast Africa. This connectivity emphasizes that Nubia was not isolated. It was a center of learning, innovation, and collaboration, where astronomical knowledge both shaped and was shaped by the surrounding civilizations. Despite their high status, Nubian astronomers faced considerable risks. Environmental changes, political instability, and social upheaval could threaten both the continuity and safety of their work. To preserve knowledge, advanced techniques were carefully guarded, passed only to trusted apprentices. This secrecy ensured accuracy but also contributed to the eventual obscurity of Nubia's achievements in historical memory. Much of their expertise remained encoded in ceremonial layouts, stone alignments, and symbolic practices, leaving modern researchers with only fragments to reconstruct. Yet the evidence that survives demonstrates the extraordinary achievements of Nubian astronomers. Aligned stones, ceremonial complexes, and ritual landscapes testify to a civilization capable of intellectual, spiritual, and practical mastery. These artifacts challenge traditional narratives that attribute advanced scientific knowledge primarily to Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, highlighting Nubia as a center of observation, calculation, and philosophical reflection. The holistic integration of empirical precision, cultural insight, and political influence reveals a civilization whose understanding of the cosmos was centuries ahead of its time, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire awe and demands a reconsideration of human intellectual history. The more closely we study these remnants, the clearer it becomes that Nubian astronomers were not mere passive observers but active interpreters of the heavens. They harmonized scientific observation with cultural, spiritual, and political frameworks, shaping the rhythms of society while reflecting on the order of the cosmos. Their legacy serves as a testament to human ingenuity, curiosity, and foresight, reminding us that the pursuit of knowledge is not confined to a single civilization or geography but flourishes wherever human minds seek to understand the universe. The stones, alignments, and ceremonial sites they left behind remain enduring witnesses to a civilization whose grasp of the heavens was astonishingly advanced, and whose intellectual achievements continue to resonate today. The lands of ancient Nubia, stretching along the lifeblood of the Nile and across sun-scorched deserts, were home to a civilization whose understanding of the heavens was astonishingly sophisticated. By the time the Nubian kingdoms had established themselves as centers of political and cultural power, astronomy had evolved from a simple means of survival into a disciplined science that informed every facet of life. These were not mere stargazers, they were scholars, philosophers, spiritual advisors, and strategists whose observations shaped agriculture, governance, ritual, and even the social hierarchy. In Nubia, to master the sky was to master time, destiny, and the very order of human life, giving astronomers a role of unparalleled influence and authority. At the heart of Nubian astronomy was the belief in the inseparable connection between cosmic phenomena and human existence. Every movement of the sun, moon, and stars was interpreted as a signal that could influence life on Earth. The heliacal rising of Sirius, heralding the Nile's annual inundation, was a moment of critical importance, determining the success of crops, trade, and the very survival of communities. Such observations were not casual or incidental. They were meticulously recorded, repeated annually, and refined across generations. This careful attention transformed the sky into a precise calendar, a tool of prediction, and a moral compass that regulated both mundane and sacred aspects of Nubian life. The ceremonial centers of Nubia stand as enduring evidence of this sophistication. Sites like Nabta Playa contain massive stone alignments deliberately oriented to solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of significant stars. Some arrangements suggest knowledge of complex astronomical phenomena such as the precession of the Earth's axis, an insight that would not be formally acknowledged in other civilizations for thousands of years. Each stone, mound, and sightline was carefully placed, serving both as a scientific instrument and a symbolic representation of the cosmos. These constructions transformed the physical landscape into a tangible map of celestial order, embedding knowledge in the terrain itself and turning the desert into a living laboratory of astronomy. Astronomers in Nubia were far more than scholars. They were advisors to kings, mediators between human society and the cosmos, and interpreters of divine will. Their predictions dictated the timing of agricultural activities, the planning of military campaigns, and the scheduling of religious rituals. Celestial events, from eclipses to unusual planetary alignments, carried immense political and spiritual weight, influencing public perception and the legitimacy of rulers. In this context, astronomers wielded a power that combined intellectual mastery with social authority, making them indispensable to the governance and stability of Nubian kingdoms. Education and training for these astronomers were rigorous and highly selective. Young apprentices were chosen for their observational acuity, analytical skill, and memory. They spent years under the tutelage of experienced astronomers, learning to chart the movements of celestial bodies, calculate cycles, and encode their knowledge symbolically in ceremonial layouts, stones, and oral traditions. Accuracy was critical. A single miscalculation could disrupt the timing of the Nile flood, jeopardize harvests, or undermine the authority of rulers who depended on their guidance. This meticulous apprenticeship system ensured that knowledge was preserved, refined, and transmitted across generations, creating a durable and sophisticated intellectual tradition. Astronomy in Nubia was inseparable from culture and spirituality. Celestial events were interpreted as messages from the cosmos, providing guidance on ethics, ritual, and philosophical thought. Festivals and ceremonies were timed to align with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, harmonizing human activity with cosmic order. Constellations and celestial patterns were imbued with symbolic meaning, serving as narratives for morality, social cohesion, and spiritual understanding. Astronomy was thus both a practical science and a philosophical framework, connecting observation and measurement with a deeper comprehension of humanity's place in the universe. The methods and tools of Nubian astronomers, though simple in appearance, reveal extraordinary ingenuity. Using sightlines, shadow-casting poles, and horizon markers, they were able to measure angles precisely, track the movements of stars, and predict solstices, lunar cycles, and eclipses. Observations were repeated systematically over years and decades, allowing for long-term forecasting of celestial events. Certain alignments even suggest an understanding of precession and other subtle astronomical phenomena, demonstrating that Nubians could think on scales of decades, centuries, and even millennia. Their approach combined empirical observation, geometric reasoning, and predictive methodology in a way that challenges traditional assumptions about the origins of scientific thought. Trade and communication networks expanded the reach of Nubian astronomy. Information about celestial events traveled along the Nile and across desert routes, allowing settlements to compare observations, verify calculations, and refine methodologies. Nubia became a hub of early intellectual exchange, influencing neighboring regions and participating in a wider network of scientific and cultural knowledge. This connectivity emphasizes that Nubia was not isolated. Its astronomers were active contributors to the development and dissemination of sophisticated astronomical understanding in Northeast Africa. Despite their elevated status, Nubian astronomers faced significant risks. Environmental shifts, political instability, and social upheaval threatened the continuity of their work. To protect their knowledge, advanced techniques were closely guarded, passed only to trusted apprentices. This secrecy ensured accuracy and preserved authority, but also contributed to the historical obscurity of Nubia's achievements. Much of their sophisticated understanding remained encoded in stones, ritual practices, and symbolic systems, invisible to outsiders and only partially recoverable by modern researchers. The evidence that survives, however, demonstrates the remarkable ingenuity of Nubian astronomers. Aligned stones, ceremonial complexes, and ritualized landscapes testify to a civilization capable of extraordinary intellectual, spiritual, and practical mastery. These remnants challenge conventional narratives that place the origins of advanced scientific knowledge solely in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, highlighting Nubia as a center of observation, calculation, and philosophical insight. The integration of empirical precision, cultural interpretation, and political influence reveals a civilization whose grasp of the cosmos was centuries ahead of its time. As we examine these remnants more closely, it becomes clear that Nubian astronomers were not passive observers but active architects of knowledge. They harmonized scientific observation with spiritual insight and social organization, shaping both human and cosmic order. Their legacy is a testament to human curiosity, ingenuity, and foresight, reminding us that advanced understanding of the universe has often flourished in unexpected places. The stones, alignments, and ceremonial sites they left behind endure as silent witnesses to a civilization whose intellectual brilliance was extraordinary, and whose achievements continue to inspire awe and wonder in the present day. The lands of ancient Nubia, stretching along the fertile banks of the Nile and into the vast expanse of desert, were home to a civilization whose achievements in astronomy remain among the most remarkable in human history. By the time Nubian kingdoms had reached their peak, astronomy had become far more than a practical tool for survival. It was a science, a philosophy, and a form of spiritual guidance. The movements of stars, the phases of the moon, and the trajectory of the sun were not merely observed but interpreted, measured, and codified into complex systems that governed agriculture, politics, religion, and daily life. To understand the sky was to understand the cycles of life itself, and the astronomers of Nubia held a position of profound influence, bridging the natural, the social, and the spiritual worlds. At the heart of Nubian astronomy was the recognition that human life was intertwined with cosmic order. Each celestial event carried meaning. The rising of a star could signal the start of planting season. A lunar eclipse might forewarn political upheaval, and the sun's path would dictate ritual timing. The heliacal rising of Sirius, for instance, marked the coming flood of the Nile, a moment of survival and sustenance for entire communities. Observations were systematic and repeated annually, refined over generations, and meticulously recorded in the landscape itself through monumental constructions. The consistency and precision of these practices reveal a sophisticated understanding of patterns, cycles, and causality that went far beyond immediate practical needs. Nabta Playa and other ceremonial centers illustrate the technical and symbolic brilliance of Nubian astronomy. Massive stones and carefully positioned alignments correspond to solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of critical stars such as Orion's belt. Some arrangements even suggest an awareness of precession, a phenomenon not formally recognized elsewhere for thousands of years. Each stone and sightline was deliberately placed, functioning both as an instrument for measurement and as a symbolic marker of cosmic order. These constructions transformed the harsh desert into a living laboratory, encoding generations of astronomical observation into the landscape itself. Astronomers were central to Nubian society, serving as both intellectual authorities and spiritual mediators. Kings and rulers relied on their predictions to time the agricultural calendar, plan military campaigns, and organize religious rituals. Celestial events were interpreted as messages from the cosmos, influencing political decisions and social stability. A single astronomical observation could carry immense weight, guiding the decisions of rulers and shaping the lives of entire communities. In this context, astronomers were custodians of knowledge, wielding power through their ability to interpret the sky and communicate its significance to society. The education of Nubian astronomers was rigorous, selective, and lifelong. Young apprentices were chosen for their observational acumen, analytical skills, and memory. They trained under experienced mentors, learning to track celestial bodies, calculate cycles, and encode knowledge symbolically through stones, ceremonial layouts, and oral traditions. Precision was crucial. Errors could disrupt agricultural planning, compromise political authority, or misalign ritual ceremonies. The apprenticeship system ensured continuity, refinement, and intergenerational preservation of sophisticated astronomical knowledge. Astronomy permeated cultural and spiritual life in Nubia. Celestial patterns were interpreted as divine messages, guiding ethical decisions, ritual observances, and philosophical reflection. Festivals and ceremonies were meticulously timed to align with solar, lunar, and stellar cycles, creating a rhythm that harmonized human activity with cosmic order. Constellations and planetary movements were imbued with narrative and moral significance, serving as educational and spiritual tools that guided communal behavior and ethical norms. Astronomy thus operated as both a practical science and a spiritual framework, intertwining empirical observation with philosophical insight. The methods and instruments of Nubian astronomers, though simple in appearance, demonstrate profound sophistication. Using sightlines, shadow-casting poles, and horizon markers, they could measure angles precisely, track the movements of stars, and predict solar and lunar cycles with remarkable accuracy. Observations were repeated systematically across years and decades, enabling long-term forecasting of celestial events. Certain alignments indicate knowledge of long-term phenomena such as precession, showing that Nubians thought in scales of decades and centuries. This combination of empirical rigor, geometric reasoning, and predictive methodology underscores their advanced intellectual capability. Trade and communication networks amplified the reach and refinement of Nubian astronomical knowledge. Observations and techniques traveled along the Nile and across desert corridors, allowing astronomers to verify, refine, and integrate their findings into a broader system of understanding. Nubia functioned as a hub of early intellectual exchange, influencing neighboring regions and participating in a network of scientific and cultural communication. These interactions reveal that Nubia was not an isolated civilization but an active contributor to a wider sphere of knowledge. Despite their prestige, Nubian astronomers faced significant challenges. Environmental changes, political instability, and social upheaval threatened the continuity of their work. To safeguard their discoveries, advanced techniques were carefully guarded and passed only to trusted apprentices. While this secrecy preserved accuracy and authority, it also contributed to the eventual obscurity of Nubia's achievements, leaving only fragments of their knowledge for modern scholars to reconstruct. The surviving evidence, however, paints a clear picture of extraordinary intellect and foresight. Aligned stones, ceremonial complexes, and ritual landscapes testify to a civilization capable of remarkable scientific, spiritual, and practical mastery. These artifacts challenge conventional narratives that place the origins of advanced scientific knowledge solely in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, highlighting Nubia as a center of astronomical innovation and philosophical insight. The integration of empirical precision, cultural understanding, and political authority reflects a civilization whose knowledge of the cosmos was centuries ahead of its time, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire awe and provoke reconsideration of history. Nubian astronomers were not mere observers of the heavens. They were architects of knowledge, mediators between the celestial and human worlds, and stewards of a sophisticated intellectual tradition. Their work demonstrates that advanced scientific understanding has often flourished in unexpected places, and that intellectual brilliance is not confined by geography or culture. The stones, alignments, and ceremonial sites they left behind endure as silent witnesses to a civilization whose mastery of the heavens was extraordinary, offering modern observers both insight and inspiration. The history of Nubian astronomy is a story of brilliance, secrecy, and endurance, a tale almost lost beneath the shifting sands and the passage of time. In an era when much of the world relied on rudimentary observation, Nubian astronomers had developed a comprehensive understanding of the cosmos that guided not only practical aspects of life but also spiritual, political, and social order. These astronomers were scholars, philosophers, and advisors, individuals whose knowledge of the heavens commanded respect, influence, and authority. They were entrusted with the rhythms of human life, their calculations determining the timing of the Nile's annual inundation, the scheduling of religious ceremonies, and the organization of political and military strategies. In essence, to control the sky was to control the flow of life itself. The celestial framework created by Nubian astronomers was both precise and symbolic. Stone alignments at ceremonial sites, including Nabta and other ritual centers, reveal a sophisticated understanding of solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of critical stars. These structures were far more than markers. They were instruments of measurement and repositories of knowledge, encoding generations of observation into the very landscape. Some arrangements suggest awareness of complex astronomical phenomena, including precession, a phenomenon affecting the orientation of stars over centuries. This indicates that Nubian astronomers were capable of long-term predictive thinking, integrating observation, calculation, and foresight into a coherent scientific system centuries ahead of its time. Nubian astronomers held a unique place within the social and political hierarchy. They were not simply advisors, they were interpreters of divine will and mediators between human society and the cosmos. Rulers relied on their counsel to determine the timing of harvests, coordinate military campaigns, and conduct religious observances. Celestial events were imbued with profound significance. An unexpected eclipse, a rare planetary alignment, or the sudden appearance of a star could influence public perception, alter political decisions, and even affect the legitimacy of kings. In this way, astronomy intertwined with governance, making astronomers pivotal figures whose expertise wielded real-world consequences. Training in Nubian astronomy was selective, intensive, and lifelong. Promising youths were identified for their aptitude in observation, memory, and analytical reasoning. Under the mentorship of seasoned astronomers, apprentices learned to chart celestial bodies, calculate cycles, and encode knowledge symbolically in ceremonial structures, stones, and oral traditions. Accuracy was essential. A single miscalculation could imperil harvests, disrupt social stability, or undermine the authority of rulers. This rigorous system ensured not only the preservation but also the refinement of knowledge across generations, creating an enduring and sophisticated intellectual tradition. Astronomy was deeply integrated into Nubian culture and spirituality. Celestial events were interpreted as messages from the universe, guiding ethical, ritual, and philosophical decision-making. Festivals and ceremonies were timed according to the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, establishing a rhythm that harmonized human activity with cosmic order. Constellations were imbued with symbolic and narrative significance, serving as guides for moral conduct, communal cohesion, and philosophical reflection. In this context, astronomy transcended practical necessity, becoming both a science and a spiritual framework for understanding humanity's place in the universe. The tools and methodologies employed by Nubian astronomers, though simple in form, demonstrate extraordinary ingenuity. Sightlines, shadow-casting poles, and horizon markers allowed for precise measurement of angles, tracking of stars, and prediction of solar and lunar cycles. Observations were systematically repeated over seasons and decades, enabling long-term forecasting of solstices, eclipses, lunar phases, and planetary movements. Certain alignments indicate an awareness of long-term celestial cycles, including precession, revealing a capacity for thinking on scales of decades and centuries. This combination of empirical observation, geometric reasoning, and predictive calculation underscores the intellectual sophistication of Nubian astronomy. Trade and communication networks enhanced the scope and influence of Nubian astronomical knowledge. Along the Nile and through desert trade routes, information about celestial phenomena was exchanged between settlements. Astronomers compared observations, refined methods, and disseminated discoveries, transforming Nubia into a hub of early intellectual exchange. These interactions emphasized that Nubia was not an isolated civilization but an active participant in a wider network of scientific, cultural, and philosophical knowledge, influencing neighboring regions and contributing to a broader understanding of the cosmos in Northeast Africa. Despite their elevated position, Nubian astronomers faced significant challenges. Environmental changes, political instability, and social upheaval threatened the continuity of their knowledge. To safeguard it, advanced techniques were carefully guarded and passed only to trusted apprentices. While this secrecy preserved accuracy and authority, it also contributed to the eventual historical obscurity of Nubia's achievements. Much of their sophisticated knowledge remained hidden, encoded in stones, ceremonial layouts, and symbolic systems, accessible only to those initiated into the tradition. Yet the evidence that survives is undeniable. Aligned stones, ceremonial complexes, and ritualized landscapes testify to a civilization capable of extraordinary intellectual, spiritual, and practical mastery. These artifacts challenge conventional narratives that situate the origins of advanced scientific knowledge exclusively in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, highlighting Nubia as a center of astronomical innovation and philosophical insight. The holistic integration of empirical precision, cultural understanding, and political influence reflects a civilization whose understanding of the cosmos was centuries ahead of its time, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire awe and provoke re-evaluation of history itself. Nubian astronomers were more than passive observers of the heavens. They were architects of knowledge, interpreters of destiny, and mediators between cosmic and human order. Their legacy demonstrates that sophisticated intellectual achievement can flourish in unexpected places, and that the history of science is far richer and more complex than often acknowledged. The ceremonial stones, alignments, and ritual sites they left behind endure as silent witnesses to a civilization whose mastery of the cosmos was extraordinary, offering modern observers both insight and inspiration, and challenging us to reconsider what we thought we knew about the origins of scientific thought. The story of Nubian astronomy reaches its most astonishing revelations in the final centuries of the kingdom, a period in which the precision, ambition, and ingenuity of these ancient scholars became fully apparent. Far from being simple observers of the heavens, Nubian astronomers were architects of knowledge, shaping the understanding of the cosmos in ways that rivaled or even surpassed contemporary civilizations elsewhere. Their influence extended across agriculture, governance, religion, and society itself, making them indispensable to the functioning of the kingdom. The heavens were their laboratory, the stars their instruments, and the landscape their record. Every observation, every alignment, and every prediction was a calculated effort to harmonize human activity with the patterns of the universe. At the heart of their practice was the belief that celestial events were deeply intertwined with human fate. The rise and fall of stars, the phases of the moon, and the course of the sun were more than natural phenomena. They were signs, guides, and warnings. The heliacal rising of Sirius, which signaled the coming of the Nile flood, was critical for survival. Yet beyond survival, astronomers interpreted these events philosophically and spiritually, linking human action to cosmic rhythms and emphasizing the moral and ethical implications of celestial patterns. To them, the cosmos was alive with meaning, a code to be deciphered and respected, and those who mastered it wielded not just knowledge but power over destiny itself. The architectural evidence left by Nubian astronomers is breathtaking in both scale and precision. Sites like Nabta Playa reveal massive stone arrangements aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and key stellar risings, while smaller ceremonial centers across the region echo the same meticulous planning. These alignments required sophisticated knowledge of geometry, measurement, and long-term astronomical cycles. Some suggest awareness of precession, the slow wobble of the Earth's axis affecting star positions over millennia. The stones, sightlines, and shadow-casting arrangements were not random. They were deliberate instruments of calculation, embedded with cultural and spiritual significance, designed to preserve and transmit knowledge across generations. Nubian astronomers were highly respected members of society, serving as advisors, strategists, and spiritual guides. Their interpretations of the sky informed agricultural cycles, military campaigns, and the timing of religious ceremonies. Celestial phenomena carried immense political weight, shaping decisions and legitimizing the rule of kings. An unexpected eclipse or rare planetary alignment could change the course of events, affecting public perception and governance. In this context, astronomy was not merely scientific. It was a language of authority, a medium through which knowledge of the heavens translated directly into power on Earth. Education and mentorship were fundamental to preserving Nubian astronomical knowledge. Young apprentices, chosen for their observational skills, memory, and analytical aptitude, were trained rigorously under experienced astronomers. They learned to chart the movements of celestial bodies, calculate long-term cycles, and encode information symbolically in stones, ceremonial layouts, and oral tradition. Precision was critical. Errors could disrupt agricultural planning, misalign ritual observances, or challenge the credibility of rulers who relied on their guidance. Through this disciplined apprenticeship, astronomical knowledge was not only preserved but refined, ensuring that each generation expanded upon the insights of the previous. Astronomy was inseparable from the spiritual and cultural life of Nubia. Celestial patterns were interpreted as divine messages, guiding moral behavior, ritual timing, and philosophical reflection. Festivals and ceremonies were meticulously synchronized with solar, lunar, and stellar cycles, creating a rhythm that connected human activity to the cosmos. Constellations and planetary patterns were not only functional, they were narrative tools, ethical guides, and symbols of human and cosmic harmony. In Nubia, the study of the heavens was as much an exercise in spiritual understanding as in empirical observation. The tools and methodologies of Nubian astronomers, though deceptively simple, reveal extraordinary ingenuity. Using sightlines, horizon markers, and shadow-casting poles, they could measure angles, track star movements, and predict solstices, eclipses, and lunar cycles with remarkable accuracy. Observations were repeated across seasons and decades, allowing for the long-term verification of celestial events. Certain alignments indicate knowledge of long-term cycles such as precession, demonstrating that Nubians could plan and predict on timescales of centuries. This combination of observational skill, geometric reasoning, and predictive calculation reflects an intellectual sophistication that rivals or exceeds contemporaneous knowledge in other regions. Trade and communication networks expanded the influence of Nubian astronomical practice. Observations and methodologies traveled along the Nile and through desert trade corridors, allowing settlements to compare findings, refine techniques, and integrate knowledge into a shared intellectual framework. Nubia was a hub of learning and collaboration, actively participating in a network of scientific and cultural exchange. Far from being isolated, Nubia's astronomers contributed to a wider sphere of understanding, influencing neighboring civilizations and shaping early astronomical thought across Northeast Africa. Even with their high status, Nubian astronomers faced challenges. Environmental changes, political upheavals, and social instability threatened the continuity of their work. To protect their knowledge, advanced techniques were closely guarded and transmitted only to trusted apprentices. While this secrecy preserved the precision and authority of their work, it also contributed to the later obscurity of Nubia's achievements, leaving much of their intellectual legacy hidden from history. The surviving monuments, ceremonial sites, and alignments testify to extraordinary accomplishments. They challenge conventional narratives that place the origins of advanced scientific knowledge solely in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, instead highlighting Nubia as a center of innovation, observation, and philosophical insight. The integration of empirical precision, cultural sophistication, and political influence reveals a civilization whose understanding of the cosmos was centuries ahead of its time. Their legacy continues to inspire awe, curiosity, and a reevaluation of the scope and distribution of human knowledge in the ancient world. Nubian astronomers were not passive observers. They were interpreters, architects, and custodians of cosmic understanding. Their work demonstrates that intellectual brilliance can flourish in unexpected places, and that the pursuit of knowledge is not confined by geography or conventional historical narratives. The stones, alignments, and ceremonial landscapes they left behind endure as silent witnesses to a civilization whose mastery of the heavens was extraordinary, offering modern observers both insight and inspiration, and challenging us to reconsider the history of science itself. The story of Nubian astronomy reaches a profound turning point when we examine the intellectual networks and cultural exchanges that allowed this knowledge to flourish. Nubia was never an isolated civilization. Its astronomers, merchants, and scholars were connected to a broader world through trade routes, rivers, and desert corridors. Observations, techniques, and discoveries traveled along these pathways, linking settlements along the Nile and beyond. Through this exchange, astronomical knowledge was verified, refined, and disseminated, creating a dynamic system of learning that extended across generations and geographical boundaries. Nubia was not merely a passive recipient of knowledge. It was an active hub, contributing innovations and insights that challenged conventional understandings of ancient science. The integration of astronomy into governance and daily life further elevated the status of Nubian scholars. Kings and rulers depended on their interpretations for decisions ranging from the timing of planting and harvesting to the execution of military strategies. Celestial phenomena were regarded as messages from the divine, carrying the authority to shape events on Earth. An eclipse, the alignment of planets, or the unexpected appearance of a star could influence public perception, adjust political strategy, or even alter the legitimacy of a ruler. In this environment, astronomers were not mere observers. They were key figures whose understanding of the heavens translated directly into social and political power. Apprenticeship and education ensured the continuity of this astronomical tradition. Young students were carefully selected for their ability to observe, memorize, and analyze. They spent years under the guidance of experienced mentors, learning to track celestial movements, calculate cycles, and encode knowledge symbolically in ceremonial sites, stones, and oral traditions. Accuracy was paramount. A single miscalculation could disrupt agricultural cycles, misalign rituals, or challenge the authority of rulers who depended on their predictions. This meticulous system preserved knowledge, allowed for incremental refinement, and maintained the credibility of astronomers across generations. The spiritual and cultural dimensions of Nubian astronomy cannot be overstated. Celestial events were deeply intertwined with ethical and ritual practice. Festivals and ceremonies were timed to correspond with solar, lunar, and stellar cycles, creating a rhythm that harmonized human activity with cosmic order. Constellations carried symbolic narratives, guiding moral behavior, social cohesion, and philosophical reflection. In this way, astronomy was both practical and spiritual, a science that educated the mind while also shaping values, beliefs, and communal identity. Nubian astronomers achieved remarkable sophistication with seemingly simple tools. Horizon markers, sightlines, and shadow-casting poles allowed precise measurements of angles, tracking of stars, and predictions of solstices, eclipses, and lunar cycles. Observations were systematically repeated over years and decades to ensure accuracy. Certain alignments indicate knowledge of long-term celestial cycles, including precession, showing that Nubians could plan on scales of centuries. Their intellectual framework combined empirical observation, geometric reasoning, and predictive calculation, demonstrating capabilities comparable to, or even exceeding, those of contemporary civilizations elsewhere. Trade and communication networks amplified the influence of Nubian astronomy. Knowledge of celestial phenomena traveled along the Nile and across desert trade routes, connecting scholars, priests, and leaders across settlements. This facilitated verification of observations, refinement of techniques, and integration of new insights into a shared system of understanding. Nubia emerged as a hub of intellectual exchange, actively shaping scientific thought in Northeast Africa while simultaneously benefiting from broader networks of cultural and astronomical knowledge. Despite their prestige and influence, Nubian astronomers operated under conditions of vulnerability. Environmental fluctuations, political instability, and social unrest posed constant threats to the continuity of their work. To protect their knowledge, advanced techniques were closely guarded and passed only to trusted apprentices. This secrecy ensured accuracy and authority, but also contributed to the eventual historical obscurity of Nubia's achievements. leaving much of their sophistication hidden from modern historians and archaeologists. The evidence that survives, however, confirms the extraordinary accomplishments of these scholars. Stone alignments, ceremonial complexes, and ritualized landscapes provide tangible proof of a civilization that mastered both practical and theoretical aspects of astronomy. These remnants challenge conventional narratives that place the origin of advanced scientific knowledge solely in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, highlighting Nubia as a center of observation, calculation, and philosophical reflection. The integration of empirical precision, cultural insight, and political authority demonstrates a civilization whose understanding of the cosmos was centuries ahead of its time. Nubian astronomers were not passive observers of the night sky. They were architects of knowledge, mediators of cosmic and human order, and custodians of an intellectual tradition whose depth and sophistication continue to inspire awe. Their work reveals that scientific innovation can flourish in unexpected places, and that intellectual brilliance is often hidden in the shadows of history. The ceremonial sites, aligned stones, and carefully encoded knowledge they left behind remain enduring witnesses to a civilization whose mastery of the heavens challenges our understanding of the ancient world and invites a re-evaluation of humanity's earliest scientific achievements. The final chapters of Nubian astronomical achievement reveal a civilization whose intellect and foresight were astonishingly advanced, yet whose legacy has been largely obscured by the sands of time and the biases of history. By the height of the Nubian kingdoms, astronomy had become not only a science but a framework that governed daily life, spiritual understanding, and political authority. The skies were studied with meticulous care, and every movement of celestial bodies was analyzed for its practical, philosophical, and spiritual significance. Astronomers were central to this system, their knowledge shaping everything from agricultural planning to the timing of sacred rituals, from the rise and fall of kings to the understanding of moral and cosmic order. They were scholars, priests, and advisors, whose interpretations of the heavens determined both survival and destiny. Nubian astronomy was deeply intertwined with spiritual and cultural practice. Celestial phenomena were considered messages from the cosmos, guiding ethical, moral, and ritual behavior. Constellations were more than patterns of stars. They were narrative symbols, carrying moral, philosophical, and cosmological lessons. Festivals and religious ceremonies were meticulously timed to align with solar, lunar, and stellar cycles, ensuring harmony between human activity and the universe's rhythms. Astronomy thus operated as a bridge between empirical observation and spiritual reflection, linking the practical with the transcendent in ways that were both sophisticated and deeply meaningful. The precision of Nubian astronomical practices is evidenced in monumental ceremonial sites, such as Nabta Playa and others scattered across the Nile Valley and surrounding deserts. Massive stones, aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of critical stars, acted as instruments of calculation, as well as symbolic representations of cosmic order. Some arrangements suggest knowledge of long-term astronomical phenomena, including the precession of the Earth's axis, an understanding that would not appear in recorded science elsewhere for thousands of years. These structures were more than tools. They were repositories of knowledge, embedding observational, mathematical, and spiritual insights into the very landscape. Astronomers occupied a position of unparalleled influence within Nubian society. Their guidance was essential for the timing of agricultural cycles, political strategies, and religious observances. Celestial events carried profound weight. A sudden eclipse, an unusual planetary alignment, or the unexpected appearance of a star could sway public perception, adjust military plans, and even influence the legitimacy of rulers. In this way, astronomy was inseparable from governance, making astronomers key figures whose mastery of the sky translated directly into social and political authority. Training and education were rigorous and selective. Promising youths were chosen for their observational skill, analytical ability, and memorization. Apprentices spent years under the tutelage of seasoned astronomers, learning to chart celestial movements, calculate cycles, and encode observations symbolically in stones, ceremonial layouts, and oral traditions. Accuracy was essential. Errors could disrupt agricultural schedules, misalign sacred rituals, or undermine the authority of kings who depended on their guidance. This careful system ensured the preservation and refinement of knowledge across generations, maintaining both credibility and precision. The tools of Nubian astronomers, though appearing simple, reveal extraordinary ingenuity. Sightlines, shadow-casting poles, and horizon markers allowed precise measurement of angles, tracking of stars, and prediction of solstices, eclipses, and lunar cycles. Observations were repeated systematically across seasons and years, enabling long-term forecasting of celestial phenomena. Certain alignments indicate awareness of precession and other long-term cycles, demonstrating an ability to think in scales of centuries and millennia. This combination of empirical observation, geometric reasoning, and predictive calculation reflects a level of intellectual sophistication that challenges conventional assumptions about the origins of astronomy. Trade and communication networks played a critical role in the dissemination and refinement of Nubian astronomical knowledge. Observations, techniques, and innovations traveled along the Nile and across desert trade routes, connecting scholars and settlements. This exchange allowed astronomers to verify findings, refine methodologies, and integrate new insights into a shared framework of understanding. Nubia thus functioned as a hub of intellectual activity, influencing neighboring civilizations while simultaneously benefiting from the wider networks of astronomical and cultural exchange. Despite their power and prestige, Nubian astronomers faced significant risks. Political upheavals, environmental changes, and social instability threatened both the continuity of their work and the survival of their knowledge. To safeguard this knowledge, advanced techniques were closely guarded and transmitted only to trusted apprentices. While this secrecy preserved precision and authority, it also contributed to the historical obscurity of Nubia's achievements, leaving only fragments for modern scholars to reconstruct. Yet the surviving evidence is undeniable. Stone alignments, ceremonial complexes, and ritual landscapes testify to a civilization capable of extraordinary intellectual, spiritual, and practical mastery. These remnants challenge long-standing narratives that situate the origins of advanced scientific knowledge exclusively in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, highlighting Nubia as a center of observation, calculation, and philosophical insight. The integration of empirical rigor, cultural sophistication, and political influence demonstrates that Nubian astronomers operated centuries ahead of their time, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire awe and demand a re-evaluation of human intellectual history. Ultimately, Nubian astronomers were architects of knowledge, interpreters of destiny, and custodians of a cosmic understanding that harmonized empirical observation, spiritual insight, and social order. Their work exemplifies the power of human curiosity and ingenuity, demonstrating that advanced knowledge can emerge in unexpected places and flourish under diverse cultural conditions. The ceremonial stones, alignments, and carefully preserved techniques they left behind endure as enduring witnesses to a civilization whose mastery of the heavens was extraordinary. Their legacy challenges modern assumptions, inviting reflection on how history has been recorded and inspiring wonder at the intellectual achievements of a people whose vision of the cosmos was truly ahead of its time. As the story of Nubian astronomy draws to its conclusion, we are left to grapple with the magnitude of what has been nearly lost to history. The civilization that once flourished along the Nile, whose scholars decoded the rhythms of the heavens with astonishing accuracy, remains largely uncelebrated in the conventional narratives of human achievement. Yet the evidence endures. Ceremonial stones aligned with solstices and stars, desert observatories marking lunar cycles, and oral traditions encoding centuries of meticulous observation. These remnants tell a story of brilliance, foresight, and intellectual daring. A civilization whose grasp of the cosmos was not merely practical but deeply philosophical, social, and spiritual. Nubian astronomers were visionaries who wove science into the very fabric of daily life, governance, and belief, leaving behind a legacy that resonates far beyond the banks of the Nile. In examining the broader implications of their achievements, it becomes clear that Nubian astronomy challenges long-held assumptions about the origins of scientific knowledge. For centuries, mainstream history has emphasized Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Greece as the cradles of advanced thought, often overlooking Nubia's contributions. Yet the sophistication of Nubian observational methods, the precision of their calendrical systems, and the symbolic complexity of their ceremonial alignments suggest a civilization operating at a level of scientific and philosophical understanding that rivaled, and in some cases surpassed, its more widely recognized neighbors. Their work invites a reevaluation of the interconnectedness of ancient cultures and the diffusion of knowledge across regions, revealing that innovation often arises in unexpected places. The astronomers themselves were more than scientists. They were custodians of time, interpreters of destiny, and mediators between human society and the cosmos. They trained apprentices with rigor, passed down knowledge through both observation and symbolic encoding, and integrated spiritual meaning into their calculations. Accuracy was not simply a technical concern. It was a moral imperative. Mistimed rituals could anger the gods, miscalculated floods could ruin harvests, and incorrect interpretations could destabilize political authority. In this sense, the work of Nubian astronomers was inseparable from the well-being of the civilization itself, intertwining knowledge with responsibility and power with ethical duty. The tools and methods they employed, though deceptively simple, reveal extraordinary ingenuity. Horizon markers, shadow-casting poles, and sightlines allowed precise measurements of angles and the tracking of celestial cycles. Observations were systematically repeated, cross-verified, and refined over years and generations, allowing astronomers to predict lunar phases, eclipses, and the movement of stars with remarkable accuracy. Some alignments suggest knowledge of long-term celestial phenomena such as the precession of the Earth's axis, demonstrating an ability to think in scales spanning centuries. These achievements reflect a sophisticated understanding of mathematics, geometry, and observational science that would not be formally documented elsewhere for millennia. Nubian astronomy was also deeply intertwined with culture and spirituality. Celestial patterns were read as messages, moral guides, and philosophical teachings. Festivals, rituals, and governance were all synchronized with the movement of stars and the cycles of the moon and sun, linking human activity to cosmic order. Constellations carried narrative and ethical significance, embedding lessons in morality, communal cohesion, and the human relationship to the universe. In this integration of science, culture, and spirituality, Nubian astronomy becomes a testament to the holistic nature of knowledge in ancient civilizations, a knowledge that does not separate practical observation from philosophical insight or empirical fact from spiritual meaning. Despite the brilliance of their achievements, Nubian astronomers and their work faced significant threats over time. Political upheavals, environmental change, and social disruption endangered both the continuity and survival of their knowledge. To protect it, astronomers guarded their techniques, passing them only to trusted apprentices, encoding information in ceremonial alignments, stones, and oral tradition. This secrecy preserved the precision and integrity of their work, but also contributed to the civilization's relative obscurity in the historical record. Much of what we know today has been reconstructed from fragments, yet even these fragments reveal a civilization of extraordinary intellect and foresight. The legacy of Nubian astronomers challenges modern assumptions about the distribution of scientific knowledge and human ingenuity. It forces us to acknowledge that advanced understanding has often flourished in unexpected regions, and that intellectual brilliance cannot be confined to the civilizations most frequently celebrated in textbooks. The stones, ceremonial sites, and observational techniques they left behind serve as enduring evidence of a sophisticated culture whose comprehension of the cosmos was profound, precise, and visionary. These achievements remind us that history is always more complex than the narratives we are taught, and that human innovation has deep and often underappreciated roots. In the end, the story of Nubian astronomy is both inspiring and humbling. It is a testament to human curiosity, discipline, and imagination. A reminder that even in harsh deserts and along challenging riversides, people once sought to understand the universe with extraordinary clarity and devotion. Their work, encoded in stone and memory, bridges the millennia to speak to us today. It invites reflection. What if the secrets of these lost astronomers challenge our understanding of history itself? What if the brilliance of Nubia, so long overshadowed, reshapes our appreciation for the ingenuity and foresight of ancient civilizations? In uncovering their legacy, we are not just observing the stars. They guide us to a deeper understanding of humanity's enduring quest to decode the cosmos and our place within it. The story of Nubian astronomy culminates in a profound reflection on knowledge, legacy, and the human desire to understand the cosmos. The civilization that thrived along the Nile, stretching from the sun-scorched deserts to the fertile floodplains, developed an intellectual framework that intertwined science, spirituality, and governance. Nubian astronomers were more than scholars. They were architects of a worldview, interpreters of celestial patterns, and custodians of a system that connected human life to the vast rhythms of the universe. Their observations were meticulous, their calculations precise, and their understanding of cosmic cycles far ahead of what many contemporaneous civilizations had achieved. Through their work, the heavens became a map of human destiny, guiding societies and shaping the course of life along the Nile. These astronomers were deeply integrated into the fabric of Nubian society. Kings and rulers relied on them not only for practical guidance, such as predicting the Nile flood or timing harvests, but also for spiritual counsel and political strategy. Celestial phenomena were treated as messages from the universe, imbued with moral, ethical, and divine significance. An unexpected eclipse, the sudden appearance of a star, or the alignment of planets could alter perceptions of legitimacy, guide military decisions, and inform the timing of sacred ceremonies. In this way, astronomy was inseparable from power and governance. Knowledge of the cosmos translated directly into authority, making astronomers indispensable mediators between the seen and unseen worlds. The education of Nubian astronomers was painstakingly rigorous. Apprentices were carefully chosen for their observational skills, memory, and analytical ability. Under the guidance of experienced mentors, they spent years mastering the tracking of celestial bodies, calculating long-term cycles, and encoding complex knowledge into ceremonial structures, stones, and oral tradition. Accuracy was not merely academic. It was essential for survival. Mistimed predictions could devastate crops, disrupt rituals, and destabilize political authority. Through this system, knowledge was preserved across generations, refined, and carefully transmitted, ensuring that the astronomical tradition remained both sophisticated and reliable. Monumental sites such as Nabta Playa reveal the extraordinary precision and creativity of Nubian astronomers. Stones aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and critical star risings acted as instruments, calendars, and symbolic markers simultaneously. Some alignments suggest awareness of long-term celestial shifts, including precession, demonstrating a capacity for long-range thinking that would not be formally documented elsewhere for millennia. These constructions transformed the desert into both a laboratory and a sacred landscape, embedding knowledge into the environment itself, and reflecting a civilization in which observation, measurement, and meaning were inseparable. Astronomy was also deeply cultural and spiritual. Celestial patterns were interpreted as moral narratives, ethical guides, and philosophical lessons. Rituals, festivals, and agricultural cycles were synchronized with solar, lunar, and stellar events, establishing harmony between human activity and cosmic order. Constellations were not only navigational aids but carriers of story, law, and societal values. Science and spirituality existed as one, demonstrating that Nubian understanding of the cosmos was as much about human and ethical order as it was about empirical observation. Despite the sophistication and influence of Nubian astronomers, their work faced challenges over time. Political upheavals, environmental shifts, and social instability threatened the preservation of knowledge. Advanced techniques were closely guarded, passed only to trusted apprentices, and encoded in ceremonial alignments, stones, and oral traditions. This secrecy preserved accuracy and authority but also contributed to the civilization's historical obscurity. The legacy of Nubian astronomy survives today only in fragments, yet even these remnants testify to an extraordinary intellectual achievement. Trade and communication networks amplified the reach of Nubian astronomy. Knowledge traveled along the Nile and desert routes, connecting settlements and scholars. Observations were verified, refined, and disseminated, creating a network of intellectual exchange. Nubia functioned as a hub of learning, contributing insights to neighboring regions while benefiting from external knowledge. This connectivity emphasizes that Nubian astronomical achievement was not an isolated phenomenon but part of a broader, dynamic system of ancient knowledge. Ultimately, the legacy of Nubian astronomers challenges our understanding of history and human achievement. Their work demonstrates that intellectual brilliance can flourish in unexpected places, and that scientific and philosophical insight was more widely distributed across the ancient world than often recognized. The ceremonial stones, alignments, and traditions they left behind endure as silent witnesses to a civilization whose mastery of the heavens was extraordinary, precise, and visionary. In reflecting on this legacy, we are reminded of the enduring human quest to understand the universe and our place within it. Nubian astronomers offer a timeless lesson that curiosity, discipline, and the desire to harmonize human life with the cosmos can produce knowledge of astonishing depth and sophistication. Their achievements invite us to reconsider the origins of science, to explore history beyond familiar narratives, and to marvel at the ingenuity of a people who looked to the stars and unlocked the secrets of the heavens long before their brilliance was widely acknowledged. In uncovering their story, we confront the profound question: what else has been lost to history, waiting in silence for rediscovery? And how might these secrets reshape our understanding of human potential and the mysteries of the universe itself? The story of Nubian astronomy reaches its final, breathtaking crescendo as we reflect on the magnitude of what these ancient scholars accomplished, and how their brilliance continues to challenge our understanding of human history. The astronomers of Nubia were not merely observers of the night sky. They were visionaries, philosophers, and scientists whose understanding of the cosmos shaped every aspect of their civilization. Across the deserts, floodplains, and rocky outcrops of Nubia, these scholars meticulously charted the heavens, creating an intricate system that intertwined practical knowledge, spiritual insight, and societal governance. They studied the stars, the sun, the moon, and even the invisible rhythms of celestial cycles, constructing a framework that guided human life in ways both tangible and profoundly philosophical. To them, the universe was a living, breathing entity, and the movements of celestial bodies were not random. They were a language, a code to be interpreted and understood. Their observations were astonishingly precise. Monumental ceremonial sites, such as the alignments at Nabta Playa, demonstrate an acute understanding of solar solstices, lunar cycles, and the rising of critical stars. These arrangements were far more than static markers. They were instruments, laboratories, and repositories of knowledge, carefully designed to preserve the observations of generations. Some alignments suggest an awareness of precession, the slow wobble of the Earth's axis over millennia, a concept that would not appear in recorded science elsewhere for thousands of years. This implies that Nubian astronomers were not only chroniclers of the present, they were thinkers who planned and predicted centuries into the future. Their intellect was as vast as the deserts they inhabited, and their vision of the cosmos was astonishingly modern, even by today's standards. The astronomers themselves held positions of immense influence and respect within Nubian society. Kings and rulers sought their counsel on matters ranging from agricultural planning to military strategy, from political legitimacy to ritual timing. Celestial events were read as divine messages, guiding decisions that could alter the course of entire kingdoms. A rare eclipse, the unexpected appearance of a star, or a critical planetary alignment could shift public perception, dictate the timing of wars, or determine the appropriateness of a ruler's decree. Knowledge of the heavens equaled power, and those who mastered it could shape human destiny. In many ways, Nubian astronomers were not simply scientists. They were mediators between the known and the unknown, between human society and the cosmos. Their work blurred the lines between philosophy, science, and spirituality, revealing a worldview that treated the universe as both a physical and moral order. Education and apprenticeship were at the heart of Nubian astronomical practice. Promising youths were selected for their memory, analytical skills, and observational talent. Under the tutelage of experienced astronomers, apprentices spent years learning to track celestial movements, calculate cycles, and encode knowledge in ceremonial layouts, stones, and oral traditions. Accuracy was not optional, it was a moral and social imperative. A single miscalculation could misalign harvests, disrupt sacred rituals, or even undermine the authority of rulers who relied upon the astronomers' guidance. This rigorous system ensured that knowledge was preserved, refined, and transmitted across generations, creating a lineage of observation and insight that spanned centuries. But Nubian astronomy was never merely a technical endeavor. It was deeply entwined with culture, morality, and spirituality. Celestial patterns carried symbolic meaning. Constellations told stories of heroes, gods, and moral lessons, while planetary alignments and eclipses were interpreted as messages about human behavior, societal harmony, and divine will. Festivals, agricultural cycles, and political events were synchronized with the rhythms of the heavens, establishing a cosmic order that connected human life to universal patterns. This integration of science and spirituality created a society in which the pursuit of knowledge was inseparable from ethical and philosophical understanding, a worldview in which understanding the cosmos was also understanding humanity's place within it. The tools and techniques developed by Nubian astronomers, though seemingly simple, reveal extraordinary ingenuity. Horizon markers, sightlines, and shadow-casting poles allowed them to make precise measurements of angles, track star movements, and predict solstices, lunar phases, and eclipses. Observations were repeated and verified across years and decades, ensuring a level of accuracy that modern researchers still marvel at. Certain alignments suggest awareness of long-term phenomena, such as the precession of the Earth's axis and other celestial cycles, demonstrating an understanding that transcended the immediate needs of agriculture or ritual and extended into the realm of long-term scientific observation. Their intellectual sophistication challenges assumptions about the origins and limits of ancient knowledge. Trade and communication networks played a crucial role in the dissemination and refinement of Nubian astronomical knowledge. The Nile, with its flow linking distant settlements, acted as a conduit for the exchange of ideas, observations, and methods. Desert trade routes connected Nubia to regions far beyond its borders, allowing astronomers to compare observations, refine techniques, and integrate new insights. Far from being isolated, Nubia operated as a hub of scientific and cultural exchange, influencing neighboring regions and contributing to a broader understanding of the cosmos. This connectivity emphasizes that Nubian astronomy was part of a dynamic intellectual network, illustrating how knowledge evolved through interaction, collaboration, and shared observation. Yet, the legacy of Nubian astronomy was not without vulnerability. Political upheavals, environmental changes, and social instability threatened the continuity of knowledge. To safeguard their work, astronomers guarded their techniques, transmitting advanced understanding only to trusted apprentices and encoding information in ceremonial layouts, stones, and oral traditions. While this secrecy preserved the accuracy and authority of their observations, it also contributed to the civilization's historical obscurity. Much of what we know today has been reconstructed from fragments, yet even these fragments reveal extraordinary sophistication and insight. The surviving evidence speaks volumes. Aligned stones, ceremonial complexes, and ritual landscapes are enduring testaments to a civilization that mastered both the practical and theoretical aspects of astronomy. These artifacts challenge conventional historical narratives that place the origins of scientific knowledge exclusively in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece. Nubia emerges as a center of innovation, observation, and philosophical reflection, demonstrating that advanced intellectual achievement was not confined to the regions traditionally celebrated in the history of science. The integration of empirical precision, cultural insight, and political influence underscores the extraordinary capability of Nubian astronomers, whose work was centuries ahead of its time. The story of Nubian astronomy is also a story of human curiosity, resilience, and vision. These scholars lived in harsh and unpredictable environments, yet they cultivated a discipline that required patience, foresight, and imagination. Their work is a testament to the human desire to understand the universe, to find order in complexity, and to harmonize human existence with the rhythms of the cosmos. They remind us that knowledge is not merely about survival. It is about understanding, meaning, and our place in the universe. Their pursuit of the heavens was both a practical endeavor and a deeply philosophical one, demonstrating that science and spirituality can coexist, informing and enhancing each other. Ultimately, the Lost Astronomers of Nubia leave us with a profound reflection. Their legacy challenges modern perceptions of history, science, and human achievement. It compels us to acknowledge that brilliance can emerge in unexpected places, and that the contributions of civilizations long overshadowed by their neighbors are vital to a complete understanding of humanity's intellectual past. The ceremonial stones, aligned complexes, and preserved techniques are not just remnants. They are enduring witnesses to a civilization whose comprehension of the cosmos was extraordinary, precise, and visionary. As we gaze at the night sky today, the work of Nubian astronomers resonates across millennia. Each star, planet, and celestial event carries echoes of their observations, reminding us that the quest to understand the universe is timeless. Their story invites reflection. What other forms of knowledge have been lost, hidden, or overlooked? How many civilizations have left silent legacies encoded in stone, memory, or ritual, waiting for rediscovery? And, most importantly, how might uncovering these secrets reshape our understanding of humanity's intellectual and spiritual heritage? In uncovering the story of Nubian astronomers, we are not merely tracing the past. We are engaging with the universal human impulse to reach beyond the ordinary, to seek meaning in the heavens, and to forge connections between the cosmos and ourselves. Their work is a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is eternal, that the universe is both our teacher and our canvas, and that even in the harshest and most remote corners of the earth, human ingenuity can shine as brightly as the stars themselves. The Lost Astronomers of Nubia may have been forgotten by history for centuries, but their vision endures, inspiring awe, wonder, and a renewed appreciation for the ingenuity of the human mind. They leave us with one final, haunting question. What if the secrets they preserved alter the story of human knowledge itself? What if their understanding of the cosmos challenges everything we thought we knew about the origins of science, mathematics, and philosophy? The answers remain hidden in stones, alignments, and stars, waiting for those who are willing to look, to interpret, and to marvel. In celebrating the brilliance of Nubian astronomers, we honor not only their achievements but the enduring human spirit that seeks to understand the universe, connect with the divine, and explore the mysteries that lie beyond the horizon of the known. Their legacy is timeless, a bridge between the past and the infinite, reminding us that the pursuit of knowledge is the most enduring and luminous of human endeavors.